Boom, boom, boom. I stole Enigma intro. I don't know why I stole it, but I just stole it. But I'm rolling with it today because you're back for a live episode of the Freedom Train podcast series. I am Joseph Ward rolling here with my man Patrick Irvin, and we got a special guest with us today, the incredible Professor Carl Tone Jones. We call him PC. What up, PC?
What's going on, family? What's going on,
Amen.
my brother?
Amen.
What's going on?
Nothing much, man. We finna get it in today on this good holiday. We all from work and we still getting paid for sitting home podcasting, so it's really going down.
Yeah, well, and we definitely need to talk about that because it's funny how they trick black people into working on and doing slave duties on Martin Luther King's birthday.
Hey. Well, hold that thought, cause we're gonna get into it. We're gonna deep dive, cause we're gonna let y'all know everything that we got going on for this live broadcast of the Freedom Train podcast series. So make sure you like this video, make sure you comment. We got our comments open. Make sure you drop your comments in. Make sure you, if you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. You're on Facebook, make sure you like our Freedom Train network page. Comment, share, make sure you tell people about what we got going on. But also remember that the Freedom Train podcast series is brought to you by PAX Inc. And PAX Inc. is a black development organization aimed at developing the black community to its maximum potential through a focus on education and economics with a trace of hard work, honesty, and integrity. And for more information, make sure you visit their website at www.pactinc.org. That way you can learn more about the organization, how you can become a member, how you can donate, how you can get involved in the initiatives. They have a great Learning Center tab. You hover your mouse over it, a whole bunch of resources drop down. You can support them in the store. You can also support PAX Inc. through the Amazon Smile program. And for all our live viewers, Amazon Smile is a program where when you sign up through Amazon Smile, you get to pick a nonprofit or a number of nonprofit organizations you want to support. And every time you purchase something off Amazon, a portion of your proceeds will go to that nonprofit organization. So you go to Amazon Smile, you sign up, you say you want to support PAX Inc. That's PACTSINC. Then you type it in, you go to Amazon, do your regular shopping. Just every time you sign into Amazon, make sure you sign into Amazon Smile, you'll be able to support. So that's how I get down. Remember the website is www.pactsinc.org. And make sure you visit our Freedom Train website at www.freedomtrainradio.com, where we got some of the best podcasting going down. And that's how we do it. And we coaxing Professor to come on back to the network. Come on to the network. Come on to the network, B.
Well, the funny part about that is I'm actually going to I'm pushing it back, but because I originally wanted this to be the start of my new podcast series, picking back up where the office I was left off. But we're looking at the beginning of February, so Black History Month. We're kind of looking at the beginning of that in terms of kicking off a podcast series. We start talking about this. It'll also be, in junction with my new film or my new book that's coming out soon.
Okay. Not to cut you off. My bad, not to cut you off. But so since we live, for those who may not know, it's been a minute, don't know what you got going on, tell them about your movie, your book, your website, and everything that you got going on.
Oh, well, thank you for that opportunity, good brother. I am Professor Carl Tone Jones. I'm out of North Philadelphia. I'm still in North Philadelphia. I left for a second, but I came back. The hood needed me. So I came back. And we've been doing podcasts and working and doing a lot of community work, grassroots work for the last, 10 years, strong. And one of the things that we realized is that we needed to have a solution for Black people. We had so many elders, so many people in the community who were dedicated to the struggle, but they had not considered what it would look like if we actually defeated this oppressive system, this oppressive regime that we're currently dealing with. So, one of the things that I came up with was, well, why don't we produce a film that sort of gives people the understanding, gives people a roadmap to, what an independent and free Black community looks like. So we then created, and you two brothers are starring in the Independence Day Project. I don't know. The Independence Day Project film. And the Independence Day Project film basically asks two questions. It asks, what does an independent Black community free of white supremacy look like to you? And what do we need to do to build it? And, scholars like yourselves, people who are active in the community, and teachers, community planners, community organizers, all across the gambit, got involved in this project. And I think we had about 20 different people who actually made the film, but we actually recorded about 30 people. A lot of people were interested in making the film. So, hopefully more people will check it out, because in these dire times, we definitely need a blueprint for Black people. We can't consistently wait on people who have shown us historically that they are not exactly reliable for Black people to gain any significant progress in this society. So, had a podcast series, several podcast series, one in particular, from the front porch, and the other one was office hours, that I was able to do with lovely co-host Erica Tolbert for a little while, and basically stepped off to try to get more back into the community and start working with some grassroots organizations. So, we were able to do certain things on the ground, but it's kind of hard because what we're going up against, this program, and in terms of what it brings to us in society, is a very difficult, thing to maintain. And so we have to So, we're going to get back out there, because the propaganda war is taking place. And right now there's another war taking place that we really need to pay attention to. And that's the Civil War, Civil War Part 2, in America. And it's not just the North and the South anymore. It's probably the North and the South end of your block at this particular point. But, it's something to look to. So.
Right. Yeah. And you teased it. So today's show is State of Emergency. Black America, we got to talk. Okay, we have to start. We got to talk about what's going on with what happened in the White House. Like we said in the previous show, we know that's not our fight, but we also understand white supremacy and racism. So since we understand it, then we got to make sure that we're straight on our front. So we want to talk about that, but we also want to talk about different things that's going on in Black America right now, state of Black relationships, all these different things. But we do want to start off with the more current event of what's going on, what happened at the White House, a lot of the information that has come out after that, and overall, how does that affect us? Because we've seen, and we don't know how true it is, but we've seen the posts throughout social media saying that these militias are supposed to attack all 50 capitals. Something's supposed to happen this day, something's supposed to happen this day, and we want to make sure we don't get caught slipping. Yeah, we know they're not, that attack at the White House isn't aimed at us, but it was aimed at something specific. They did have an overall mission going on with storming the Capitol. So I keep saying White House is the Capitol. So let's kind of start there. So and this evolved from us having our regular conversations offline. It was like, man, let's go ahead and do it live with this. So, Pat, you shared an article a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago or so, about the panic buttons being ripped out of the offices in the Capitol. Kind of, you want to expand on that a bit, or kind of bring people up to speed on that?
Yeah. So, first off, happy to have you back on, Professor.
Right.
Always good to have you back on. I do, to go back just a little bit, we know that this isn't our fight per se, but it does affect us, and it is going to have an impact on us. And the things that are happening are things that we need to be paying attention to. So it's not directly our fight, but indirectly it's something that we need to definitely take seriously and be prepared to do battle should we need to on all fronts. So with the panic button, so during the attack, during the siege, the organized coup attempt on the federal government, and yes, I said it that way on purpose. The panic buttons, the silent alarm buttons for the members of the squad. There are 4 members of the House of Representatives that are, they're minority women, so they represent women of color. And I hate that phrase. That's why I put the bunny ears up. But, they do represent women of color.
Yeah.
But the panic buttons in their offices were ripped out before the attack happened. And it's just one of the many things that have come to light that suggests that this was indeed an organized and planned, well planned event that had a lot of insiders working with those people. And like I said yesterday, Joe, there were people that were just caught up in the movement, caught up in
Yeah,
the moment.
yeah,
Nobody's gonna dispute that. But there was an organized and centralized effort as well of people that went in there with the purpose of abducting people, of killing people, and of gaining hostages. Like there
hmm
is that element, and that has been something that's been story after story after story after story. Like you can't just write that off as conspiracy nonsense
right.
or quackery or whatever. Like that's happened. And so I want to say this before I turn the floor back over to PC and yourself. Try not to, and this is something we talk about often, the three of us. Try not to think about things in terms of whether or not, when we're talking about future events, try not to think about things as whether or not they're actually going to occur.
Right.
When we're thinking about these things, we have to think about them from the standpoint of, is this possible and what's the likelihood of it occurring? If it's possible, you need to develop a plan for it. If the potential of it happening is highly likely, then you need to have a lot more urgency with which you plan and execute. So there are a lot of things that we might say and suggest that might not actually come to pass. And we all own up to that. We're all making educated guesses based on history and our knowledge of current events and things of that nature. But the fact of the matter is, if it has a possibility of occurring, you need to be prepared for it. Better you be prepared for something that doesn't happen than not be
Hey,
prepared for something that does.
like we said last night. All right, so first of all, these people have been talking about what they would do if Trump doesn't win for years. They've been talking about that.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, no, you could say like we know it was organized, but it was organized chaos, like we said last night. So you had some skilled people mixed in to a motley crew. These folk stormed the Capitol building of the United States of America and get through. Like get through, get up in there. They broke into the Capitol, like with no real resistance. What kind of goddamn fool you think I am if you think it's just something that just so happened to happen? Like, come on, man. And then we're seeing all these different reports come out about, like you said, the panic buttons being ripped out and certain people just not being there this day and these things happening and these things happening. And it's like it all just don't make sense to me. Like I ain't trying to say I'm the smartest. I did try to get my Khalid Muhammad shine on my head today to look sophisticated, but I ain't no dummy. And I know that if me, you, and Pat, and we gather 20 other people and we try to storm the Capitol building, it's not going to work out the same. So so I'm going to say allegedly it was an inside job. We got to say allegedly. So allegedly inside
Allegedly.
job.
Well, yeah, we can say allegedly, but I mean, that's just based on the fact that we don't want to be considered liable. But I mean, the handwriting's on the wall. A lot of people that were caught up there with some high-ranking police officials, officials that were in law enforcement in many places. You had some people who owned some big supporters, financial supporters of the Trump administration. You had, you had the battle or the fight that took place between the anarchists and, the so-called Trump supporters or whatever. But, basically just had a group of white folk that's out there, tearing stuff up. And what really intrigued me was how easy they got into the building, how little resistance they faced. And, you saw basically a lot of places that you would consider to be, specifically the Capitol building, supposed to be in Washington, D.C., supposed to be one of the most secure places on earth.
Right.
So the fact of the matter, these people got in there with such ease, and so many police officers called out that day. So many people abandoned their posts. It's kind of hard not to see the right on the wall. And just like Pat said earlier, there's a report of panic buttons being removed. You had people who were hiding under their desk. You had some of these really very visual people who not necessarily, they weren't, I'm not talking about celebrity wise, but people who made themselves very visible, very easy targets to find during this whole thing. It kind of, gives you the impression that they were already under the impression that they would be scapegoats for what happened. They would already understand that they would be scapegoats for how this went down. So the definitely was some inside planning going on. And this is why currently, supposedly, the FBI is investigating and doing background checks on the National Guard members that's supposed to be in Washington, D.C. for the inauguration in a few days. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And what we're seeing right now, this is a civil war. We really, because we have this fantasized way of looking at history. We kind of look at history from a nostalgic point of view. We don't recognize it when it's happening in front of us. But these confrontations, these brush fires, these things are all the things that lead up to the major conflicts. And what we have to understand is, when the Civil War, the original Civil War was fought, it wasn't because they wanted to free black people. It was because they wanted control of their country.
Right.
And because there was one economic system for the North and another economic system for the South. And when the two didn't match, you had succession. And in the process of the succession, you had a war that was really an illegal war, to be honest, if you want to talk about the books and the rules and the laws. But it was a war to bring the country back. And one of the issues on the table was whether or not the institution of slavery was involved in that. So, we have to look at what's happening right now. And like you say, they have this conversation about attacking the 50 state capitals, which is going to be really interesting for some places that are strategically identified as states. So I'm really interested to see what happens in Hawaii, because Hawaii is a military fort. So I'm really interested to see what happens there. But, the fact that it's been broadcast, it makes me wonder if something else is under, if something else is coming up, because typically, when these groups meet up, they don't announce their presence. They don't give you a scheduled itinerary in terms of when they're going to. They typically just show up. So the fact that we're hearing about this right now, and we've heard about it for the last 2 weeks, about what they're going to do on that particular day, kind of makes, I'm kind of wondering what's really going on.
It's kind of like something me and Pat was talking about last night is we don't want Black America to go to sleep because all the blue got voted in. Mm-hmm. So everything isn't all good just because blue is just in. So it is us still realizing that this is America, and you still have a whole good section of America who don't want us here and feel anything that threatens to minimize any portion of white supremacy, they're going to go after, and they're going to go after with force. And that's why we see what's happening right now. It's you have these group of white folk. They like, nah, y'all not finna take our America. We worked hard to get this America. We done got Donald Trump in. Donald Trump, he cool with instilling these old racist ways. So let's go ahead and rock with him. And you got all these groups. And Pat told us about the QAnon groups, and then you got all these far right wing groups and crazy white folk groups and stuff like that. So they not playing. I mean, cause think about it though. Think about it. Black folks say we tired of the government, and we just talk about it on social media and we crack on people. White folks say they tired of the government and they attack the government. These folk ain't playing, so we can't come out here slipping.
I think one of the things. Go ahead, PC.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think one of the things that I don't think at this point it's hard for anybody to push back against the notion that this was like they had a lot of inside help. And there were two
Right.
distinct groups of people. One of the groups was the groups like PC said that they were out in the open, faces shown. A lot of these people were prominent people in a lot of these alt-right groups and these, other white conspiracy groups like the QAnon people. You did have your ignorant white people who was just running in there with the rest of them. But then you had this third group of people that isn't getting a lot of attention. And these were the people who I've been focused on with the face mask covered, the full gear on, the zip ties that you've been reading about. These were people that were armed. These were the military arm of what happened.
Right.
And that's the group that it's not getting nearly as much attention as the other two groups. The silly white people group that we've been posting about and laughing about, like the white lady who got pepper sprayed in the face and she's crying and walking out and everybody's laughing and joking at her. What'd you think was going to happen? Insurrection Karen. You got that, and then you got like the QAnon guy with the horn who was walking around with just drawing
with the goat
attention
skins
to himself. Right. But there's only been like 2 or 3 pictures that I've seen of the guys with the mask and the zip ties and the military style fatigue and gear and with the backpacks and the weapons. There aren't a whole lot of pictures of those guys, but when you read through a lot of the reports, you're finding that these were the guys who were actually causing a lot of the trouble. These were the people that were actually going through creating a lot of the havoc, that were looking for specific people, that were trying to get into specific places. And so I think you got to pay attention to that. Another thing you got to pay attention to is the fact that these QAnon people, and these are the people that worship Donald Trump, they have reiterated and reinforced their position that there will not be a Joe Biden presidency.
Right.
Like they have reinforced that. So I think one of the things we got to think about is what sort of psychological message has been sent to these white supremacists. They just stormed what's supposed to be the most secure building in the world at one of the most secure times on the planet, and they took the building and held the building for a number of hours without any major casualties. I think they had 1 or 2 people get shot. Now, the mindset that a lot of us had was storming the Capitol building would result in massive casualties. We're thinking landmines, we're thinking sniper rifles, we're thinking bars at the gate. Like, we're thinking all of this. Nope, apparently you just walk right up in there with bricks and break down the windows and climb in.
Right.
On the floor. And then take souvenirs. Finding rooms in that building that are not listed for the public, in offices, secret offices, bunker offices, and things of that nature, and they ended up in these places. And there's been reports that they were using radios and Bluetooth to connect communication apparatus to go all around that building, and so they were getting sort of directions. That's the impression, that they were getting directions in terms of specific places in that building to go and to raid and to possibly kidnap, because there was a legit threat to some of those people that were in that building. I happen to know some people that work for people that were under their desk that day in the Capitol building. So this is that was a very that was a siege. That was a siege and a coup d'etat. And the fact that it was, like you said, Patrick, that there was not much resistance, that there was not much of a penalty or consequence. But you take this back and you go all the way back to the Clive and Bundy Ranch out there in Nevada, where they had a standoff and the federal government stood down. You go back to the Oregon, what was it? The Oregon Wild, I forget what state building it was in Oregon, but basically, I think it was a Wild Refuge house or building that they vandalized and took siege and held captive. This has been a consistent push by these these militias and all of these so-called alt-right white supremacist groups for a long time. We're going back you can go back to the Oklahoma City bombing, but really in these modern times, because our memory is so short and our attention span is so short, we can just go back to the last 2 years and see a lot of the stuff that's been going on. And the impression that you would get is that there may be some people inside this building that believe in a lot of the rhetoric that was being said, but also something more important for us to recognize is that this election that would just happen, this was a close election with 70 million people that actually voted for the guy that got ousted. And and I'm not necessarily friendly with the 70 million that voted for Biden either, because I believe they're both two sides of the same coin. But when you really look at it and you look at how caught up and tied up into these political differences that happen, that have been shown, and the fact that, we have a White House, a president that's refusing to relinquish his seat in this particular time and has a bunch of people following him, eventually I would imagine eventually we're going to have to see some type of blood on the streets, because one side doesn't seem to be backing down.
It's not foreign. It's not foreign to America. I mean, but also, like, to put some perspective around this, there was more force to eliminate Christopher Dorner, one man, than it was to protect the actual Capitol building.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so who's uncles, cousins, friends, girlfriends, sisters, mamas, grandmamas who was working on the inside, allegedly, right?
But there have been a number of investigations, and this is why I keep saying it's not conspiracy at this point. There have been a number of investigations and reports that have shown, this is why the FBI is trying to do a background check on all 25,000 members of the National Guard that are going to be security for the Joe Biden inauguration. They found that there was help from the inside on all levels, the congressional level, the presidential level, where for 90 minutes reports are out that he was watching it on TV, happy, smiling. So on the presidential level to the congressional level, where you have members of the Senate and the House encouraging this behavior, supporting this behavior, you have members of congressional support staff and whatnot that actually took pictures with some of the protesters, like all the way down. Not protesters, the treasonous thugs that just attempted a coup on the American government. And that's the other thing, right? And PC, I'm glad you said our attention spans are so short. I don't think we're really giving this situation the gravity it deserves. These people literally just by the Constitution only defines one crime. And that one crime is treason.
And they committed it.
And they fit the bill.
Right.
They were a group, a large mass of people organized to prevent the execution of public law by force. That is the constitutional definition of levying war, which means that this is the constitutional definition of committing treason.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, but once again, though, that's why, like, I am in the mindset of, okay, they did this. They were allowed to do this. They were helped to do this. So for us as Black folk, we know this is not our fight per se of the actual storming of the Capitol, but we know where we know where we fit in this puzzle piece. Let's not act like we don't know where we fit in this puzzle piece. And if you're the Black person who act like you don't know where we fit in this puzzle piece, I mean, just go look at your history.
No, Joe, let's not do that. We gotta actually explain to people.
Well, I'm about to get into
where we fit. But go
they
ahead,
don't like you. They will eliminate you.
Well,
point blank period.
Well, before we do that, though, we really need to, like Pat said, clarify what actually happened and give it the proper, make the proper analogies. Well, because right now the propaganda is calling these people protesters. No, these people stormed a government building,
Right,
a
not protesters.
protected government building. It's not just treason. These people are terrorists. You know,
They are.
this was a act of domestic terrorism. They
Right.
had people in there scared. They used terrorist tactics to do these things. So you know, this is a terrorist tactic, and when you become a terrorist, then you definitely become an enemy to the state. And as an enemy to the state, you don't even have constitutional protections anymore once you do those things according to this particular government law. But like I've said before many times, and I'm sure you guys said, these laws they're not applicable to black people because technically speaking, we're not, you know, natural born citizens. You know, as naturalized citizens, all those laws and policies can be, you know, thrown at us, but natural born citizens seem to have a specific type of protection in this particular government that precludes them from even being identified as terrorists, even with the so-called fourth branch of government, the media. So, you know, we have to truly understand how this wasn't just something that, because we have a tendency as black people to make fun and make light of things that make us uncomfortable.
Right.
So, you know, as soon as these things came out, we saw 1,000,001 memes, people with clever jokes
here, jokes everywhere.
Yeah, but this is a serious matter. You know, internationally speaking, these things are not just happening here. You're starting to see this turmoil all over the world, and you're starting to see cities on fire, people in the streets taking down government buildings. This is happening all over the world. You're having power outages in major hubs, and let's not forget that we recently had, a suicide bomber, or allegedly a suicide bomber in Nashville just a few weeks before this, who blew himself up in front of an AT&T communications building, which caused a problem with people being able to, effectively communicate in that region for a little while. We need to be on the lookout for things like, because when we start transferring and we start talking about how this affects black people, you know, we are definitely going to feel a ripple effect of this, specifically in particular, because we have certain black groups and organizations that are aligned with some of these other white anarchist organizations and outfits, and they have a way of pulling black people in. I mean, the second day of this particular uprising or treacherous or terrorist treasonous act, you had people out there literally with Black Lives Matter flags and posters and stuff like that outside of the Capitol building in the midst of this crowd that was out there fighting. So, you know, we really have to get to the nooks and crannies of this particular thing, if you know, in terms of how the fallout is going to affect black people.
Well, yeah, I mean, all right, so black people are the expendable race to them. They don't see us as equals. They've never seen us as equals. We've always been a labor class or less. So in a time where you have white people who feel like their livelihood is threatened, because that's what they're telling themselves, our livelihood is threatened, and we're seen as one of the greatest threats to their livelihood as well. Not just us, but we know other groups of people, but we're seen as one of the greatest threats to their livelihood. And so a group of people who never really saw us fully as humans, only saw us as a labor class and or flora or fauna, when it comes to this point where they're like, all right, our livelihood is threatened, we're going to do anything we need to do to protect ourselves. We know that we can become a target at any time, because we always have become a target at any time for groups of people like this, groups of white people like this. I mean, we can just go through, look at a lot of the massacres and the riots and the mass killings of black people throughout history, and we can see like the connections of how they treated us and how they viewed us. They don't care, and we need to be prepared to just deal with whatever outcome or whatever fallout that could come out from this, because we can't just be out here all vulnerable. But I do agree. I'm making jokes and stuff, but we do need to understand our enemy. Like study these folk. Don't just take this like, oh, this is just one group of crazy people. Like we're talking about, this thing was connected totally from top to bottom. Like folk knew this was going to happen on some level. There was a lot of people who didn't know, but folk knew this was going to happen. That's why it was so easy to happen. So just always thinking, okay, well, how could this come back on us? That's where I'm at.
Well, I think one of the things, real quick, that I think we do have to keep in mind. Two things, really. One is the point that PC made earlier. Donald Trump got 70 million votes.
Yep.
And this was after 4 years of him showing what he is. like you can't say, like, because the first time you could say those were votes that was punishing the Democrats, those was people that took Trump as a joke. You know, you can make all those excuses the first go round. Now you've had 4 years of seeing what this man is.
Yep.
And he got even more votes.
Yeah.
Than he got the first go round.
Yeah.
And keep this in mind, like, Donald Trump has received more votes as a presidential candidate than any other president, with the exception of Barack Obama. Like, keep that in mind as well. Like if Joe Biden hadn't broken the record, Trump would have the record for most votes in a single presidential race. Like, keep all of that in mind when you're trying to rationalize that this is just one small group of people. And
That's
even
what
if you want to say all of those people that voted for Trump are not a part of this group, well, what fraction of them are not?
Of 70 million.
Because any fraction of 70 million is still a lot of fucking people. Like, it doesn't matter how you try to break that. 70 million is a number so big your mind can't even conceptually picture 70 million things. You can't even picture that many things at once in your brain. That's a number you can't intellectually or imagely, visually fathom. But that
It's
many
real out
people supported this man after 4 years of him showing you that he doesn't, that what type of person he is. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The second thing I want to keep in mind is, while this attack was happening, there were attacks happening all over the country. And I shared one in particular that upset me, but there were a number of them that upset me, where black people were being beat up and brutalized.
Yep.
For trying to go about their daily business.
Yep.
One woman, I think, got beat up walking home from work. She got mugged and almost killed. There was another incident where, in another state, where a group of black people were beat up by a mob of Trump pro supporters, Trump treasonous. You know, like that. Like these things are real. So even if you don't live in D.C., that woman that got attacked in California is about as far away from D.C. as you can get, as far as still being in America and or on the continental USA, and she still got caught flat. Like we got to start connecting the dots, man. Like, this man at the top doesn't like anybody that's not a part of his group.
Yep.
And as a black person, you ain't a part of that group. Even if you support him, he don't like you. So if the man at the top is setting that kind of tone and is encouraging his followers to beat people up, to kill people, to push people around, to bully people, to do all of these other things, what do you think those idiots at the bottom that are following him have in their mind to actually do? They want to please their leader.
Yep.
You know, the thing that you mentioned, Pat, and there's been a lot of reports, people being ambushed, people. There was a drive-by. I think it was like a drive-by on in Los Angeles, in one of the most upscale neighborhoods or communities out there. You know, where somebody black was just getting hit, and you know, it's like, for some strange reason, the only time we consider danger or proximity to be a threat is when it's with each other. But the truest danger has always been these times when white folk have been warring, and during the time they're warring, but most importantly, when they come back. You look at just the history on these shores in this country with black people during the American Revolution. I mean, first of all, let's just talk about the origins of this country, you know, how violent that was. And then we get to call it Thanksgiving because of the massacres and things of that nature. Then you start talking about the American Revolution, 1774. And right after that war, you know, you saw an incursion of violence towards black people. Then you start talking about the other wars, 1812, Spanish, all these particular wars. up until the Civil War, even after the Civil War, World War I, World War II, every particular time you've seen these wars, right after the war, there was a spike in violence towards Black people. We talk about the Black Wall Streets burning down. All those wars and things of that nature came around. All that violence came right after those times. When white folk get riled up, they start looking for blood. Their entire history is encased in warfare. And this is when they were just living with each other. You know, the Visicals, the Vandals, and all those other tribes, the Angles, all those different tribes, they were bloodshed. Yeah, bloodshed. I mean, we call vandalism because of the Vandals. You know, we have to really be key. And the thing that's really bothering me is how cavalier we consistently are. It's like we don't even need to go historically where I just went. We could just go back to the last 12 months and see all of those things encapsulated in 1 year in terms of how the violence can pick up and Black people can become the collateral damage of all sorts of violence, you know, partaking, and not just collateral damage, targeted, you know, because these folks out here have a bloodlust. And so I'm not saying it for Black people to be spared, but to be scared or afraid, but just be on our wits. Right. What we need to do security wise, you know, as we talk about in the Independence Day Project, if we really understood the type of warfare that we were dealing with, we would never be anywhere alone. And we would always make sure that we had measures in place to make sure that we were protected. And we would always let people know where we were going. And nowadays, we really have a sort of arrogance about us, an air about us that precludes us from even being it's like we want to put on this facade of not being concerned about things that we should be very damn well concerned about. You know,
got comfortable.
I was just at the track working out before we came here. And it's funny because I had 3 sisters who were working off on the side part of the track where, you know, you do the lunges and jumps and the hill run. And they had children running the track unattended. In these days and times, you know, we're just talking about children being kidnapped, snatched up, and being put on the market and sold and traded and things of that nature. But even in these times, we have people who are sitting there amongst themselves, paying no attention. I did like 2 laps with these kids. You know, we are just not, when it comes to the idea of being safe and secure and understanding those things. We don't have the luxury of white folk and saying that our right to being trampled on. No, our right to just live is in jeopardy every single day. And we're not treating it with the proper respect that it deserves. And therefore, we keep finding ourselves in these situations where we get isolated, where we're caught off guard, where we get caught unarmed. And then now we have an entire population fighting on each other. Because I'm not so sure about these so-called liberals either. I'm not sure because, you know, Pat, I disagree with one thing you said, Pat. You said it wasn't a conspiracy. No, it wasn't a conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy, I think, going on though, because I think there's some meeting at the top that have these groups involved in a scrum somewhere. And as long as they're involved in the scrum and we're focused on the scrum, we don't get to see or pay attention to a lot of the things that are happening on the sidelines and a lot of different policies and things of that nature that's going out. I mean, not just policy, but a lot of the actions that's taking place. But I definitely see a need for us to sort of not just be on high alert, but this is just how we should be functioning anyway. We should be more observant of our surroundings, and we should be more prepared to deal with a potential crisis because we are being hunted, you know, and that's a serious thing to look at.
Yeah, I keep saying we can't get caught slipping. Like we just cannot get caught slipping and thinking that, okay, well, Donald Trump is voted out. We got the House is blue. We got the 50-50 split in the Senate. Kamala Harris got the tiebreaker. Then you got Joe Biden in. We blue. So we good. We got Donald Trump out. Racism is over. We can go back to the other racism where, you know, it was undercover racism. And it's like, well, we will never go back to where we were. People have been woken up. Like this is a time where we keep saying people feel like these white groups feel like their whole livelihood is threatened, and they need to do any and everything to survive, including take us out. And what they've been doing, like attacks, they've been attacking us with impunity. They've been attacking us and not giving a damn about it. They attack us, kill us, and go home and play with their kids and go to sleep like nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
And we really can't get keep concentrating on the crazy stuff, on the wild stuff. Like I'm not telling nobody how they can de-stress, but I am saying we have to minimize our distractions in times like this. Don't just get scared when you think it's gonna hit your doorstep, because it could been and got you by then. By the time you think it hit your doorstep, you waiting on a social media post to tell you, well, these white folk finna show up at the Capitol. Man, these white folk at your door.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we, like, and I just keep going back to how serious this event was, and because I really feel like people are just waving it off. But on top of that, um, looking at the response, you know what I'm saying. So right now, there is no domestic terrorism law in America, and I made a post about it. Joe Biden is promising to look into creating a domestic terrorism law in America, and I don't like it. And I'm gonna tell you, I don't like it because any sort of domestic terrorism law that they create, when you pair that up with the FBI report on black identity extremists and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the other things we've been seeing, that puts everybody doing this live right now at risk. That puts a lot of black people that are doing stuff in the community at risk of being considered a domestic terrorist. You don't need we being honest, we don't need a domestic terrorism law. We have a law called treason. All right?
Use it.
Try these people as the treasonous that they are. We have another law. It's a wonderful law. It's one of the greatest laws of all time. Some people tell me it's one of the greatest laws ever lawed. Like it's one of the most fantastic laws. This guy walked up to me the other day. He said, "Sir, that's a great law." And I said, "You think that's a great law?" He said, "Yeah, that's a great law." That law is sedition. All of these Congress members, the president of the United States himself, right now, he's about to be out of office one way or the other. But these Congress members, they should all be expelled from Congress, and you could try them for sedition, even if you don't try them under treason. All of the people that stormed the Capitol building should be tried at minimum with treason.
Off with their
And
head.
we meet the 2 year. There's a constitutional minimum. There must be two witnesses to observe the treason in order for the treason to be charged. That's like 200 million witnesses to the
Pick me.
treason.
Pick me. We all saw it.
Like, so in that, I do agree with you, PC, when you say it definitely seems like there is a conspiracy. Now, at this point, it's hard. It is a conspiracy from the standpoint of we don't know what the end game is or how far this is going, but so much has been exposed that the fact that there is something in play is no longer conspiracy to me. That's now fact.
Yeah.
Something is in play, and so I say that to say don't get caught up in this whole blue, red, whatever, because frequently the liberal solution to the problems brought about by conservative movements
It's conservative movements.
it is not beneficial for black people. Their
Right.
solutions do just as much damage as the problem they were trying to solve. There's been numerous books written from various people saying, "White people, please stop helping us." There are like 3 books that I've come across with that exact title. White people, please stop helping us.
They go from blue to reddish blue, huh?
So definitely don't sit back and start thinking that. And look, this is another point, and I'm gonna be quiet. Another point, real quick. What Trump has started was always there, and really the roots of a Donald Trump presidency, you can find those roots in the 70s and 80s, in those days of the Conservative Party, where the party really kind of shifted onto the plane that it's on now. So when you could go back to the Southern strategy, but this current course that the Conservative Party is on, that really finds its root with some of the conservative thought leaders that came to power after the Southern strategy in the 70s and 80s. There was a shift in how they were going to go about doing things. Don't think that Donald Trump leaving office is going to be the end of this. These people are still here. They've always been here. They're going to be here. And these people are not loonies that you like to say, these isolationists living off in the woods. No, these people are your
They
doctors,
connected.
your lawyers, your kids' teachers, your neighbors that wave at you every day you pull into the driveway and then curse you out the moment you go in your house. These people are some of your friends, some of your family.
Saying that, like I told you, I watched One Night in Miami last night.
I'm sorry, Joe. It's not a secret.
It's not a secret. But you just remind me of a scene where the guy who playing Jim Brown was at the white dude house, and the white dude, I guess they always been friends or whatever. And the white dude had told him, Jim, he told Jim Brown, I'd do anything for you. Then the lady in the house was like, hey, old white man, you need to come fix him in the house. And Jim was like, I help you. Like, no, Jimmy, we don't allow niggas in the house. And it just kept going like it was nothing. And it just like Jim Brown's just sitting there like, what the hell just happened?
Oh, you gotta. Well, that's a nigga wake up call.
Right. But it's the thing of, don't think that just because they could be cordial with you in certain settings that they down with you. Stop inviting everybody to the goddamn barbecue.
I'm not coming to the barbecue.
I mean, shit, me neither. Because it's like a white person just dance good and they get to come to the barbecue. Man, come on, man. Like, have we not studied COINTELPRO at all? Have we forgotten how it's always been used to infiltrate our organizations and tear them down and tear them apart, take away the head? Like, look at history. If you look through history, whenever white people, European powers wanted to overrun kingdoms and things, first thing they do is they attempt or they successfully take out the head. And after you do that, the body falls. Look at what happened with Gaddafi.
Well, when we really, allow this thing to play out, what we really need to be focused on is what position will Black people be in when this is all said and done. Because these are times right now where they're not focused, and we know that when they start to truly focus on us, that things get really bad in the Black community. You start seeing more the ramp up of violence and things of that nature. You start to see that. So we're starting to see the remnants of that now. But what we need to be doing, collectively speaking, is not resting on our laurels, not taking time off. We really need to be, building economically so we won't be so dependent on the stimulus check. We need to be building community-wise so that our network is available to us in case of a crisis. And we need to make sure that the parameters in the community where our security is jeopardized. We need to make sure that those things are secure, and we need to also make sure that as other Black people that some unsavory types won't take this opportunity to sort of catch us with our pants down. Because we do have some members of our community that are not necessarily allies in regards to, how they approach one another and how they approach us. So these are very important times for us because these are the defining times in history. We're living through one right now. And most people, it's like you can't see the forest because you're stuck in the trees, or you can't see the trees for you're stuck in the forest. Whatever the analogy is, we're there. And we can't see the landscape of the big picture. And the big picture is no matter who wins this scrum, this internal fight, for the new world order that they're trying to preserve. Because like I said, this thing is happening globally. You're seeing stuff happening in countries all over the world right now where there's uprising and upheaval taking place. Whoever is the next one in charge, they are not going to be a friendlier enemy to us than the ones that just left. And whether it's the liberal groups that like to, because I always say there are two sides to a coin, right? And for Black people, the so-called conservative and alt-right, all those people, they believe in killing you with one swift blow. but the liberals believe of death of 1,000 cuts. You know, I mean, because I still remember a certain liberal who ran for president that called me at that particular time, because I was in that age group, a super predator who needed to be brought to heel. You know, I remember that same liberal bragging about we came, we saw, and we killed Gaddafi. You know, and so and in the cities and the streets, we saw nothing but more impoverishment, more crime, and we saw nothing to improve the conditions of Black people in terms of ownership, controls of their community. We were just basically fed the breadcrumbs, and you had the politicians telling us to be happy that that's what we got. So when we start to really look at this is a perfect time for Black people to really start to own our own communities again. This is a time for us to own our own purpose in those communities. And this is a time for which we can actually clean up all the riffraff, all the craziness that goes on that's limiting us from building an empowered community. But I'm saying all this, and I'm understanding, though, that the parameters of COINTELPRO are still in existence. So when we wonder why a lot of the organizations we build run through different, it seems to be monkey wrenches in a lot of things that take place. We get snags in progress, and in terms of the build, and we start to lose the energy, and the energy gets siphoned out those organizations. Don't think for a second that that's just ineptitude. A lot of that is planned because we have, agents that make sure that we are not able to ever build anything or become empowered as a people. So we have to also be, considerate of that factor as well. But I agree with you, Pat. This is no longer a theory, man. These things are happening factually in the world. These things are happening factually around us. And the thing is, we have to stop looking at them with such a light regard, because I'm really saddened at the state of our community that we've become such rugged individualists that we don't care about what happens to somebody down the street. But if it happened to us, we would want the whole world to stop on its axis. To give care to what happened in regards to the conflict or the violence, or being victimized by some of these things that are happening. So we really, really, really have to look at this particular situation that's about to go down in a few days and make sure that we don't allow riots to take places on our community again, that we don't allow the people to convince Black children that they have a role to play as subsidiaries in some of these scrums and battles that have taken place between these two arbitrary groups of white people. We have to make sure that we step out and speak out against organizations that will promote being in support and camaraderie with these particular entities, because that's how that stuff tends to leach back into our communities. And we have to start moving smartly as a people who are being warred on, and start to protect ourselves so that we won't be subject to ambushes, and so we won't be subjected to getting caught around the corner by ourselves, and we won't be subjected to situations to which people can just launch a mitigated violence against us without fear of repercussions.
Yeah, we need to get real. And I do want to say before I get into it, y'all please share this video. Make sure you like this video, comment, sharing, make sure other people can see it. That help the algorithm when y'all share the video and y'all liking, comment, and all those things. That we appreciate everybody who have been sharing and liking the comment. Appreciate you all. But once again, the severity of it and really understanding what's going on. But when it comes to our unity and us making sure that we are taking care of self, let's put ego aside. Like, everybody can't be a leader. You might want to be a leader, but everybody can't be a leader. We need real organization, real things. Like, Black people are dying for real out here in these streets. Like, we're being hunted for real. Our conditions are real. The disparities are real. Like, I work in the HIV sector. Since COVID happened in March, I've seen at least 7 Black folk who look like me get diagnosed with HIV. I've seen a number of people with HIV get diagnosed with COVID. So we're talking on multiple fronts, and we're talking about strategic entities who've been studying us for hundreds of years, who've been killing us for hundreds of years, who've been conditioning us for hundreds of years. They know us. They know us better than we know us. And it's time for us to get over that and have that paradigm shift, so we're making sure that we're accurately taking care of ourselves. Regular individualism has to go out the door. We understand you might have this going on, but if you're truly serious about black people being safe and black people prospering, then we got to put the bullshit aside and really get serious, serious. You know how we like to say it twice in the black community? We got to get serious, serious about our liberation, about our freedom, about our safety. Don't just wait for it to come knock on your doorstep. That's unacceptable behavior in 2021. Oh, well, I didn't know. Too much internet. We have no time for people to just not know. It's time to do the research, time to do the studying, it's time to understand what's going on. Don't just study black history, study them white folk too.
Yeah,
Know what's
study
going on.
everything. Study everything, including what we're saying right here. Like fact checkers.
Right.
Like if you find that I said something wrong, please at me, because chances are I've been saying it for a while. So I want to know if I'm saying it wrong, because I ain't trying to spread no bad messages.
Right.
So if I'm saying something wrong, please, I beg you, fact check me. Let me know. Beyond that though, congruency. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, I'm gonna go to rugged individualism first, because a lot of people misunderstand that. And what we're saying is that you can't. There's no problem with you being you. You being a unique entity strengthens the whole.
Right.
But you can't come before the whole. Like you can't be before the group. Like that, because we're as a human species, we're social creatures. We need each other to survive. No human could survive in isolation by themselves. You need other people. You know, well, they could, but they go crazy and start talking to rocks and trees and shit. So, but you need people.
I am legend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like you need people. You being an individual means that when we as a group run into a problem, all of our uniqueness allow us to look at it from a different perspective, from different perspectives, and come up with different solutions that we can then as a group mesh together to solve the problem. Our uniqueness as individuals gives us group flexibility. But the moment an individual thinks they're above the group, more important than the group,
That's when
that's
stuff
when you
become
start having
compromised.
problems. And that's happening too much, where people will put, and I'm extreme with it, which is where we go to congruency. Like, don't just say the shit, do the shit, be the shit. Everything you say, do, and think should line up.
Live it.
And I understand we're all naturally kind of hypocritical because we grow and we evolve and things happen and views change and all of that. But in any given moment, you should be striving to be congruent in all ways at that moment. And if you're doing that at that moment, then over time you're in alignment. We got to get over this. Oh, I'm against this until somebody in my family is it. Or I don't want to do this until somebody in my family does it. Or even with the memes going around, like we got to clean up our community. We got to get these drug dealers and these murderers off the street. Well, what would you turn your son in if you found out he was a murderer? Shit, that's tough. What's tough about that?
Right.
What's tough about that?
Right. If
Like,
you for the community, if you pro-black,
right, community first. I don't give a damn if it's my daddy and my mother and my son and my daughter and my brother and sister out there committing mass murders together. The moment they tell me is the moment they stop. You know why? Because community come first. That, like, we gotta be there. You know what I'm saying? And even when it's hard to be there, we gotta be there. So with that being said, I agree. We gotta clean up our communities. We gotta connect with each other. We gotta start taking shit seriously. We gotta start educating each other. And sure, we have comprehensive plans for how to deal with this shit. Now, are we gonna get into them right now on the air? Well, we already been talking for an hour. Probably not. But trust and believe.
we got forms for getting into them plans. This not the time or the place.
We've thought about this, and we have our own ideas individually and as a group of three of us and as an organization. We have ideas and plans in place for what we could do now. But even with that, our plan doesn't have to be the only one, because our plan isn't going to work for your location and your locale. And if you don't even have a mindset to think about things from that perspective, and you take the plan that we give you and try to run it
The
verbatim
same
without
way.
making any changes to accommodate your specific unique situation, shit ain't gonna work. So you gotta, but I want to go back to this real quick. I want y'all to pay attention to the psychological games being played, not just on black people, because I agree with what Joe said. It's not just about learning black history, black culture, and black perspectives. You need to learn as much as you can about every fucking body.
Mm-hmm.
Black, white, Asian, whatever. Every fucking body. Learn as much as you can about all of them. But pay attention to the games that's being played right now with what just happened. The white supremacists and the alt-right movement in America just got a huge thumbs up. They
Yep.
just got a huge level of encouragement. Not only has the president, the commander in chief, been encouraging them to do this shit for the last 4 years, but they did it with no resistance and no casualties. Yeah, I know the one woman died, no casualties, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did it with no pushback. And thus far, the response, I know the FBI says they've arrested 150 people. They have 100,000 investigations running. Thus far,
They got
over
away
the
with it.
last week, 2 weeks, there has been no substantial consequence
Just a
to
little slap
any
on
of
the
it.
wrist. You shouldn't have done that without
Right.
asking us first.
Pay attention to the psychological message that was just sent to these people, and the level of encouragement and the level of excitement and
A
enthusiasm
second wave is
that they
coming.
now have.
A
Yeah.
second wave is coming. Believe that. We believe because it's almost like watching one of those like timepiece movies like Troy or something, and the Trojans they hit the gate or they enemies the first time, and they get in, they get some stuff, and they only lose 10 people, and they come back. They 1,000 people stormed it, and they only lose 10, and they come back and be like, well, shit, we got that far and we really have nothing to happen to us. All right, let's go ahead and plan our next attack because if we see that all right, we got minimal casualties, that's a plus for us. We were able to accomplish our mission. Yeah, we might in this case, the storming the Capitol, we might not have been able to grab X, Y, and Z and take them and do these things, but I feel like we can do better next time. So let's go ahead and perfect our plan.
Yeah, well, that whole thing about reinforcement, right? And you learn that in psychology, positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and how you want to either encourage or discourage behavior. Well, they definitely received a lot of positive reinforcement in regards to the fact that there have been literally no negative, side effects or negative consequences for their particular actions. And, what it did is embolden people who didn't come out. It emboldened people who were on the fence. And then embolden people who are standing on the sidelines saying, I would have did this, but I was afraid. But now I see that, y'all did this and came home. It's always worse when somebody can go home and regroup, because then they come back and they can sort of fix all the things they did wrong. Any battle strategy, the second tier war or the battle, if you make it out of a battle, even if you took an L, but you go somewhere and you can sort of reinforce yourself and regroup, you can come back and launch an attack, and based on what you learned the first time, be more efficient with your attack.
Yeah.
And see, but that's just understanding that we are, this is a wartime economy, like not just economy, but these are we're living in wartime right now. This isn't often, people are used to seeing bombs being dropped from the sky and the high-tech military shenanigans that we saw when CNN used to show visuals of the Desert Storm and Desert Swarm and all that, and people have a misnomer of not understanding all the facets of war. And because we don't really look at the war that's been happening to us, we're not really paying attention to, because this type of dysfunction, we're kind of used to this. This type of dysfunction, we are kind of used to how the shenanigans, I keep using that word, but that we saw in Washington D.C. and other places around the country. I believe they attacked and you heard that a lot of different places, man. And just in Maryland alone, the state troopers were told to stand down, according to some reports. The National Guard was told to stand down, according to some report. DC Metro had like half the police force call off work. You actually had people who were firemen killing police officers that were actually guarding the Capitol and dragging his body down the street. I think a guy was a fireman or something of that nature, smashed the head in of one of the Blue Lives Matter cops. I'm gonna throw that out there because I don't never want to hear white folks say Blue Lives Matter again after the fact that they took part in the mob that killed a police officer. But when we start seeing all this stuff, we have to really understand. And it's something too that we have to get to. That there's that generational fear that's genetically encoded in us when we see white folk get up angry and upset. And we've seen it in personal and close quarters when you see a white guy, something like that, start, around black folk and he start acting irate. The first thing black people try to do is calm the situation down. It's because, and it doesn't even matter how big or how small that white guy is. It's just a matter of it strikes a sort of like generational chord that of fear within us and it's psychological. That people don't even realize is happening when it's happening, but we have to get past that particular fear and understand that nobody benefits from us living or surviving but us. And if we understood that to a degree, I look at this from a standpoint of generations from now. What will our grandchildren say about these times what will we be able to say to them about what we did during this time? Will we be able to say, well, while they were out there, defending and protecting our community, I was in Miami partying on the beach. I was in this particular, I was in Mexico, in one of these party retreats, when all this stuff was going on. Or are we going to say that, we had to buckle down and make sure we had the community in place, we had the connection, the network, that we had plan A, plan B, and plan C for if we lost power, if we lost connectivity with our cell phones and things of that nature, that we actually sit with a community group and organize ways to make sure that we be able to patrol our communities when these cops will be pulled off because they have to deal with the terrorists, this, that, and the other, and there's nobody to defend our community from potential vandalism and harm. So we have to, really take a hard look in the mirror, because I'm tired of the only time I hear black men getting talk tough is when we're talking about sports, athletic events, or who's the best rapper. I'm really seriously tired of those kinds, but we can't talk about the needs and protections of our community without somebody wanting to feel uncomfortable and change the subject. These are those times when we have to, have straight talk as men and talk right really like, yo, where's your nutset at this particular time? Because apparently, outside of playing football or watching a game or a fight or like I said, discussing who's your top 10 rappers, this, that, and the other, only thing you use your balls for is to squeeze off and have create baby mamas. So we have to have those serious conversations, and better sooner than later, because the time and the sand, the glass of sand is running out.
I was like folk like Dr. Claude Anderson and other scholars in the same realm have been telling us for a long time to get our stuff together because time is running out. Like hopefully we're in the midst of defending ourselves. We are making sure we're telling our own stories, using these platforms, using other things to tell our own stories. So, 50 years, 60 years from now, the descendants won't be like, well, I'm not my ancestors. You can get these hands like these knuckleheads do today. Ain't no black people whooping nobody ass these days, but other black people asses. Let's just be real with that.
And let's also be real about these platforms, because if we want to hold people accountable, let's hold everybody accountable all the way around. Like these black media outlets are not doing their jobs, in my opinion. They're not framing things from a black perspective, and when they do, it's from the perspective of comparing black people to white people as if white people are the standard. Nowadays, you're hearing this constant rhetoric around, look at what happened. Look at what they did for the Black Lives Matter protest compared to what they did for the Like, and I'm not saying that's not a valid angle. Like, I get it. Like,
But
let's do that.
but
But at
stop
the,
saying that, because this is America. That's what they do. We know this.
yeah,
That's like saying, oh, did y'all know birds could fly? Like, come
right,
on.
right. No, I get it. But on the other end, like as a black media outlet, I feel like you have a responsibility to go deeper than that. Like to not just talk about the surface level things, but like in this one thing, if you just like it's not what your show is about or your platform is about, but you feel the need to mention it, cool. I got no problems with that. But I'm listening to a lot of these shows, and I'm not gonna call them out because I don't want nobody to go find them. Um, but I'm listening because that's how I feel about them right now. But I'm listening to a lot of these shows that they're supposed to be doing deep dives on
Mhm.
black culture, black happiness, black this, black that, America from the black perspectives, and they're about as shallow as a kiddie pool. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no depth to the conversation at all. Like you leave the conversation with more questions than you had when you entered the conversations, and no new answers.
Mhm.
No
Yeah,
new answers whatsoever.
yeah.
It
But
was
see,
it's a bitch fest. We get to bitch and complain about things, and it's just like stand back and look at us, and it comes to with psychologically speaking, this whole idea of gaining strength through being a victim, and I'm just not with that. I just don't think you gain strength in being a victim. If that's the only way you draw power, I think you could draw attention from that matter, but you can't draw power from being a victim. And too many
Right.
of us have drawn into that victimization doctrine, to which we're going to scream and holler and appeal to the hearts of the soulless people. And I know that might come across to some people that don't. But listen, I just got to be real. We don't have time to placate at all. You can't look at the history of how black people have been treated in this country, internationally speaking, and say to yourself, a people with a soul could dehumanize a person, can dehumanize a group so much that you could treat them in such a terrible way. I mean, damn, on the plantations, we had black people who said, I'm just going to refuse to do this. I'm going to refuse to do that. I'm going to refuse to eat. And you literally had white folk going in there with chisels, chiseling their teeth out so they can stick a funnel down their throat to shove porridge in their mouth. We definitely have to really understand who we're dealing with and what we're up against. This is not a situation, and because black people, even the worst of black people, still have a loving nature. We still don't really understand, what it's like to deal with people who just don't seem to have a soul. And so you can't appeal to their better nature when their better nature doesn't exist. And they often look at things from a race first perspective. Yet somehow, some way, we get black people to want to be the United Nations of universal suffrage in regards to being a bleeding heart for everybody else's suffering.
right,
I'll turn a blind eye to ours. I was
right.
having a conversation with somebody the other day, and it was brought up, and it said, how can we tell black people to love thy neighbor when we don't love ourselves and we don't love each other? And if we don't love each other, how can you always talk about loving somebody else that ain't black? And we keep trying to appeal to the love of other people, and while at the same time shunning other black people
Well,
who are saying we're desperate for this love and attention we need.
well, it's kind of fitting that you're saying that on this particular day, being January 18th,
Right.
because they're dedicated to Dr. King. And one of the
Shout
things
out to
that,
Coretta.
right, yes, definitely, definitely shout out to Coretta. But one of the things that aggravates me about Dr. King is going to like what you just said is the misconstruing of the messages and the twisting of the message and the narrow focusing of the messages, because the man said a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
but we only focus on the "I have a dream" speech, and when he's talking about racial equality. What about the speeches when he was talking about black economic empowerment and empowering black families and black communities? It's on tape.
What about the audio and the tape of him calling out white supremacy and basically reminding black people that we're in a war for our lives?
Right,
There was a reason why they killed him. It wasn't
right.
it wasn't because he was becoming more friendlier, in terms of his doctrine in
Because he was
regard.
waking up.
He was basically in his journey. And let's not forget, man, Malcolm died at 38. Martin Luther King was Malcolm was killed at 38. Martin Luther King was killed at 39. You brothers are approaching that age. I'm several years past that. only imagine if these brothers were able to, fulfill their mission in terms of the mission statement,
Hey,
in terms of how they were building and the progress they were moving towards, how influential they would be. They
look,
would the
look,
saturated versions of black leadership that we see right now.
look, and especially because we know that Malcolm and Martin were moving toward working together
Mm-hmm.
because their ideologies were aligning after Malcolm leaving the nation and going after coming back from Mecca and having realizations of his own, being able to see the world through his own eyes. Same thing with Dr. King, having his realizations and seeing the world different, both having paradigm shifts, then having secret meetings and being able to come together. I'm with you, man. It would be great to be able to see them like actually be able to work together and implement the plans. Like I have an audio of Ossie Davis talking about that because he was great friends with both and talking about just the power and the impact of that collaboration that would have happened. A lot of things would have been definitely different, but once again, it's going back to the history of white supremacy. They couldn't have allowed that to happen because if you allow that to happen, it's a threat to white supremacy. And they will eliminate anything that's a threat to their supremacy.
Let me just say something that should actually trigger something in black folk. The reason you have an FBI that can investigate 50,000 people right now is because of J. Edgar Hoover's mission to take down the Back to Africa movement of one Marcus Messiah Garvey. That in itself, not the fighting against organized crime, not the fighting against the gangsters of those particular times, not Al Capone, none of those other reasons. The reason you even have an FBI in place right now is because his first COINTEL operator was directly working for J. Edgar Hoover as he was working against the mission of the UNIA and Marcus Garvey's push. That should just let black people know how much power we have, that you can create all these different particular law enforcement agencies that are strictly based and guided out of in the guise of preventing black people from progressing. And at that time, black people wasn't even talking about building black nationalism in this country. Black people were talking about leaving or just getting civil rights. They weren't even talking about the whole concept, collectively speaking, of being of utilizing black nationalism until the 50s and the 60s. So, we really need to understand that the power that we have is so. There's a statue at the Native American Museum on Bowling Green, in the Bowling Green section of Manhattan, which is right down the street from Wall Street. It's literally right across the street from the Merrill Lynch Bull. That's out there where people have literally rubbed the tarnished or the paint off of the nuts of the bull. And only there's four particular ones. One statue there. These are all the queens of the particular nations in question. You have one from Asia, one from Africa, one from Europe, England, and one from I think it was France, if I'm not mistaken. And all these particular the statuettes that they had up there, all of the queens were sitting there fully clothed, eyes open. But the one with the black, the one with Africa, you had the queen, she was asleep. Not only was she asleep, her chest was broad, her breast was bare, like exposed. The only one that was unclothed. And she was resting on a sleeping lion. And that just speaks to, in the illustration and what's been explained about that particular statue in terms of its design was it was meant to show that Africa was an untamed and sleeping land of resources and riches. But what I also read into it is that's African and black people at large. And as long as you can keep us, because behind the woman was a cloaked, European man, sort of whispering into her ear. And that's what we're dealing with right now. We keep having people talking about how our votes are not mattering or this, that, and the other. Well, that's because we consistently as black people give our power to other people. We give our power to the white folk. We give our power to Asians. We give our power to the Arab. We give our power to religion. We give our power to everything except for Black empowerment itself. And because we consistently are comfortable with giving our power to other people, we have consistently been a childish type of people in thought and mindset. In regards to responsibility and things of that nature, we have not even grasped the concept of what it would be like to grow our own food for our community. And we have not grasped the concept of what it would be like to protect our community. Our best security apparatus right now is dialing 911. Instead of saying, well, I'll step out there and this, that, and the other and protect my community. Our best apparatus for getting food is going to the supermarket. Instead of saying, you know what, if the supermarket's closed today, I can go out in the wild and hunt a deer and go hunt an antelope or whatever the hell is out there. You know what I'm saying? Raise chickens, create a farm, this, that, and the other. We have not internalized. So therefore, we treat everything like children. And then we wonder why Black relationships don't last. It's because after the childish honeymoon phase, you have to deal with and I'm sorry, I'm jumped into this because I know Joe said you wanted to talk about this a little bit, but nothing we put together is built to last because it's like children. We build it with Lego blocks as Black people, and we're not building it with granite. We're not using mortar and brick. We have all these ideas like children building a Lego city, things of that nature. But when it comes to actually constructing those things to a practical purpose, we sort of back out and hope somebody else comes in and fills in the blank. And that's what's happening right now. Even with this happening in DC and all this stuff, we're hoping that it dies down without us having to get our hands dirty. And unfortunately, we ain't got to worry about our hands getting dirty because our shirts are going to be bloody from the carnage if we don't pay attention to how the spillover typically comes into our communities. Sorry for the rant. Yeah. I've been drinking some coffee.
No, seems like you had a lot you need to get off your chest, so you know you're gonna sit back and let you get it.
Let it fly.
No, but I agree. I think we're in a space, and I have a lot of unpopular opinions. This is one that I will present live on the air. I'm one of the few Black people that believe that if Malcolm and Martin had lived, they would have lived to be old men, very disappointed in Black people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that there would have been a major shift. Matter of fact, I think, because you got to remember, they became more popular than they'd ever been after they died.
It became martyred. But let me speak to that with Malcolm for a second, because I don't disagree with Dr. King, even though I think that because Dr. King's issues were more domestic. But what Malcolm was trying to build was international. You know, he was trying to garner that international support. And he was really on the brink of becoming successful. Literally, if he would have lived another 2 weeks, you know, we probably would have seen an epic change in terms of how Africa was functioning. But I get what you're saying, though, because it seems as though the nature of us, and, you know, I want to, you know, speak to something we spoke about, we talked about privately, too, because we talk about this all the time. We talk about the fact that how the chemical and biological warfare that's taking place in our communities with the way they do food, GMO processing, the things they're spraying in the air when you see the chemtrails, but nobody really pays it any mind. And also the water we drink, how it's medicated with fluoride. And you heard me right, medicated, because fluoride is so toxic that you need a special license just to handle it on its own. And it's being poured into the waters. You got children actually taking fluoride pills, not to mention all the different things that are happening with the environment around us. And after a while, you start to wonder, mentally speaking, if that's had an impact on our, or if that's dulled our senses to the point where we're not actually able to cognitively truly break down the sophistication of what's happening, the nuance of how things are moving. Like you said, Pat, you have all these Black channels and all these Black media outlets who are talking about what happened in DC. Like, if this was Black people, well, actually, we should be past the point of having that generic conversation at this point. We should be really able to break down why if it didn't happen to black people, why it did, and what that means for black people, and what we should be doing and how we should truly be analyzing the things that are taking place. And what's happening is, like, we go back to it's easy to just jump on some bandwagon shit and talk about things. But when it comes to for us to really truly have some sophisticated analysis about what's going on, you start to see the limitations in terms of our depth of knowledge when it comes to those things. And that in itself is very discouraging, because I'm talking about, when we have these conversations, you can't even have these conversations with pseudo scholars who supposedly well learned and educated, and you actually see them in classroom teaching other black people. And this is but they're not themselves not able to have the type of analytical mindset to break down what's happening in front of us and actually see the big picture for what it is.
So I'm sorry. I just want to ask this to you, Pat. So because you're saying you don't think it would have had an impact. You mean like just on? I know you mean the masses, because the masses never brought in. But you don't think like Mark, even if they wouldn't have changed Black America, you don't think that them two being who they are, having the experience and the leadership qualities that they had, those who would have followed them would have been at least been in a better position?
No. And here's why. Because those who followed them didn't carry on after they passed. Those who followed them didn't continue anything of any consequence. They did continue, but they didn't continue anything of any consequence. And this is not a slight on those who followed them. This is kind of an analytical look at black people in mass. The moment those charismatic figures were out of position, all of the work they were doing, like you had people trying to continue on. Some of those people trying to continue might have been even smarter, even more tactically brilliant, even more analytical, but they weren't as charismatic. And as black people, we need a charismatic something in front of us for us to believe in it. And I know some people will say, well, that's a people thing. I know we're not talking about people. We're talking about black people right now and what we need. And so that's where I go with that. Even with what PC was just saying, like, and this goes back to one of those points that we talked about some of the traits that black people need to get rid of when we start talking about ego, right? Like, we can acknowledge that lead, one of the effects of being exposed to lead, high levels of lead, is that it slows down cognitive function. It limits cognitive function. We've been exposed to lead in our communities for decades. But when you take what we know to be an effect of lead and try to have a conversation about could that effect actually be in place in the community, people lose their fucking minds. They lose their fucking mind because their ego won't let them accept the idea that they might not be as smart as they could be had they not been exposed to the things that they've been exposed to. Nobody's saying you're dumb. You're saying you might not be at the level that you possibly could be at. So if you're brilliant, you could be a stone cold genius had you not been exposed to the things that you have been exposed to. But because of ego, because of pride, because of the inability to control ourselves emotionally, there are conversations that we can't have. I tried to have a conversation recently with a group of people about the statistic that's been running rampant for the last 5-10 years in the community about black women being the most educated group of women on the planet. Yeah. I'm not trying to get into that here, but I just presented the source of that statistic, and I presented the actual attainment numbers, which should be used to measure a statement like that. I just presented them. The people that I was talking to did all kinds of mental gymnastics and backflips, and I swear to God, I thought I was watching the goddamn 96 Olympics. The way that these people were flipping all over the goddamn place, trying to make it so that the statement itself was more
See,
significant and made more sense and was more logical than the facts that it was based off of
hey,
that disagreed with it.
hey,
This is
PC,
what we talking about.
Yeah.
you PC, you just heard Pat say he don't like black women, right? You just heard him say that, right? Because that's how it happens.
That's
That's
what
how
they
it
heard.
happens. Yeah, right.
They heard.
Well,
Right,
I
that's
mean,
how-
I'm just following up because PC earlier called us stupid too. So
Hey, but nah,
I'm
it's
just
funny though. It's funny, like,
following
fuck them facts, man. What are facts really, right? Facts aren't real things except when I need them to prove what I need to prove. But other
right.
than that, they
Everybody
not
got their
real.
own truth, right?
Yeah. But no, I do get what you're saying. As far as because you've talked about this before, as far as the continuation of the legacy of Martin and Malcolm. So as you said that, the first thing that popped in my mind was, okay, well, we did have Stokely Carmichael with the Black Power movement, but that really transitioned into establishing a nation in Africa and not necessarily something tangible for Black America here, because hell, here we are now. So I do get that when you're saying, um, if there's no legacies, there's no real tangible legacy to follow it, then what can we do with that other than just make memories about it?
Well, let me
Well,
make this point real quick.
okay.
Think about this too, though. If it wasn't for Coretta, would Martin really have a legacy?
No, he wouldn't if it wasn't for her, because she pushed for this day that we're home to
So,
happen.
and the same could be said for a lot of the people, because there are a group of people even to this day that are continuing to push for the Malcolm X legacy. But I like when I was growing up, Malcolm X had no legacy to speak of. Like out of the kids in my class, there was probably two of us that knew about him, and I'm talking about like in elementary school. There were two of us that knew about Malcolm X, and I knew about him because my mama told me, and my friend knew about him because I told him. That was
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Now I knew about it. I think because my daddy and my dad and my brother. I think they're born around the same time, so I knew about Malcolm X growing up. I know when I was young, I used to always think, well, why don't we honor Malcolm the same way? Because they were both honorable, but
Well, I'm gonna tell you why. Because we have really good revisionist history. In their times, neither Malcolm nor Martin was extremely popular with the
Right.
people while they were alive. After they were martyred, I mean, Malcolm had his small crowd, Martin had his small crowd. You know, after they were martyred, they became, larger than life figures. But, revisionistly speaking, I mean, not revisionistly speaking, but historically speaking, at the time that they were at their political strongest, they themselves were just as they didn't even have the popularity that Louis Farrakhan has today, and no
right.
Right.
variety, and but when you, like you said, we said earlier, we have this nostalgic energy when it comes to history, and we talk about historical figures, they loom larger than life. But and it wasn't really for Malcolm. His legacy didn't take a resurgence until until the Spike Lee movie, which probably featured more about Malcolm prior to joining the nation than it actually did to his exploits after the Nation of Islam. For instance, they just had a movie released. Regina King just released a movie.
One night in Miami.
Miami, well, that conversation never took place. Well, that discussion was never revealed in the Malcolm X movie. But, we know from that particular thing that there were a lot of those meetings that took place. It wasn't just one night in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
But historically speaking, they weren't looked at and trivialized or idolized as they are right now. And what it really speaks to now, and it kind of disturbs me, is just that this is a trend. And
Right.
and following black and worshiping black idols is a trendy a trendy occupation, because yes, when they died, they did have people who followed suit. They did have students, rose, who tried to rise to prominence, who tried to rise in leadership. But what they weren't prepared for was the fact that this is a war, and you cannot treat a war like civil injustice. You cannot treat a war, as if this is a violation of somebody's civil rights. No, human rights was the issue. And if somebody is trampling on your human rights, by all definitions, that's warfare. And since we did not look at it as warfare, our black leaders, even though they carry guns and this, that, and the other, they were not ready for the war that took place, and how the state-sanctioned, federally funded, state-sanctioned hits that were literally going out. Fred Hampton, that was a state-sanctioned hit.
Yeah.
So, Bobby Rush, lucky he wasn't home, because they were coming to his house next. All the different political prisoners are who's still in jail to this day. They tried, but you have to have sources, revenue. You have to be able to fund your war. You have to take it serious enough to do all those different things. You can't just go out there chanting, we know justice, no peace, when you're not receiving justice or peace.
Well, I think that's the downfall of romanticizing the civil rights movement, or romanticizing Dr. King, and not really focusing on the realistic work that was done to try to keep black people safe. Like you say, they were fighting against a war, and that we're still fighting today, to stay alive as human beings, not just to be recognized as human beings, but just to exist as human beings. And the part that get romanticized is, well, we should all work together in racial harmony. See, first of all, we can't skip over the bullshit. We can't just skip over that and just say, well, you know what? We forgive white people because it's January 18th. We're just gonna there has to be some kind of reconciliation of things going on there on that front. So one of the things I don't like about this is the media, all the media hype and all these things here. Oh, Dr. King this and Dr. King that, and then they go back to crackering 10 minutes from then. And it's like, let's not just keep throwing the man's name out like he was just out here making cookies or something. Like we can't do that. Like, it's some real shit. They were fighting for real people's lives, and we still fighting for real people's lives to this day. Let's treat it like what it really is. The man was murdered, and ain't nobody do nothing about it. And guess what?
I won't say that. They did burn down a few cities now.
Well, I like that. I do like that. But overall, it's like, okay, we're only going to focus on racial harmony. Y'all killed the man.
Well, that's what happens when the devil writes your bio. When you allow the devil to write your bio, the devil's not going to look bad in the manuscript. So and when we look at who has been able to co-opt this message and who puts the money behind the hallmark moment of I have a dream that black children and white children and all that bullshit, when they skip off the last 40 minutes of the speech, we have got to have some pushback against that narrative. When people are doing it, just like we're talking about it right now, and we're talking about the fact that was not what he stood for. And if you want to talk about him in 1964, then let's talk about him in 1967 and 1968, when people were considered far more radicalized around black empowerment, and talked about marching on Washington D.C. and having a different type of outcome than because what he spoke to about in 68 about having that march on Washington. Well, that was what was supposed to happen in 63 and 64. That was supposed to happen back then. But, it got commercialized again by the Carlyle Group and all the people that Kennedy had in sponsoring when he controlled the purse strings of black leadership. We have to really illustrate our stories and be better orators of our stories, and be better supporters of those of us who tell our stories. We tell our stories and stuff. We told our story in the Independence Day Project, and it's very hard to sell to black folk. We have to be able to tell our story and be better at policing who speaks our narrative. Because as I was on a podcast yesterday, and one of the things that was brought up was nobody who is not Jewish can tell a story about the Holocaust or Holocaust survivors. And that should be how we handle our history. Nobody who is not of us should be able to dictate to us how we speak to or speak of, the legacies in our history, and most specifically, how we tell our stories today. Specifically, and I know we have a censored media, specifically with social media as of late, but we have to get to that point where we don't need their social media to tell our story. We don't, but
unfortunately, we do though. We do. Yeah, because like we've tried to start our own social media platforms. We've tried to migrate people away from the social media platforms. I'm always engaged in a campaign to get people to leave Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I've been waging that war for 5 years. Yeah, ask me how successful I've been.
We're back here.
Right. So, but I think, to take it back, I think because one of the things that doing that has given me is the ability to, like, I don't feel connected to social media, and I'm very grateful. Like, if even though I failed to getting Black people to leave, I can honestly say, like, social media is not a major part of my life. And at the time that I started to tried to get people to leave, it was like, it was a significant part of my life and my daily routine, and even my fight for Black people was on social media. So I'm grateful now that, like, I'm in the real world, if you will, and I come into social media to do social shit, and then I'm back out again. So you might not hear from me for 2-3 months on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, and just, I'm doing real world shit. You'll find me online though on a couple other places, but you're gonna find me. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think one of the things though, going back to the martyrdom, like, I look like the most current example we think about, like, not just people like Pop Smoke, but like, I feel like Nipsey Hussle is the biggest example.
Yeah, he's the latest martyr. He's been martyred.
You know what I'm saying? Like when this man was alive, outside of the true hip hop heads,
they weren't paying attention.
West Coast people, I don't give a fuck what y'all say.
That wasn't
following that man like that. Like, but
Nipsey.
The marathon.
Look, that's for real. Nipsey Hussle had a cult following of loyal Nipsey Hussle followers.
Right.
I listened to. I brought the Victory Lap album. I was on YouTube, and I think I was watching The Breakfast Club or something, or some interview, and somebody mentioned it, and it was like, you need to go check it out. It's a real hard album. I knew who he was, but I just really wasn't on him like that. And I listened to the album, like, it's a damn good album. I'm listening to the hell out of this album. Still listen to it now. But people were not. I wasn't on Nipsey like that, and people were not on Nipsey like that until he was killed. When he was killed, everybody like, oh my God, look at what we found.
He passed away and went multi-platinum. Like, all of a sudden, everybody is a Nipsey historian. Like, they've been following not just Nipsey, his whole goddamn family.
His whole movement, yeah.
Like they know his granddad. Like, they know his granddad's granddad. Like, they could tell you, like Nipsey Hussle's connection to Jesus Christ. Like, I first heard of Nipsey Hussle, and I listen to hip hop, like hardcore. Like, I follow battle rap. Like, I'm so hip hop. I would follow the battle rappers. Like, I first heard of Nipsey Hussle in 2016 when he dropped the "Fuck Donald Trump" song.
Yeah, I like that song.
That's when I first heard of him, when he dropped that. And I thought it was funny. I ain't gonna front, but I didn't really, like, go and start binging, trying to figure out who he was. I was just like, oh, this is funny. This is a cute song. Keep it pushing. Then this man died, right? And the name comes up again, and I'm like, yo, that's crazy. But watch this. Like, watch this. Within a week of this man dying, everybody in my fucking circle, on social media, in my artificial circle, everybody all over the world, seems like every Black person I bumped into,
I became a Nipsey fan.
Nipsey Hussle fan.
No, not a fan. Fanatics. So many people, they had to close down their store for like 2 months to fill all the orders for people who then wanted to support his store. And it's crazy, but we're just and that goes back to the whole idea of being trendy again.
We got to get over that.
the way we move, and this is why culture is so big, because culture protects you from making foolish moves or being so disorganized and chaotic in terms of the way we operate. Culture sort of encases you to function a certain type of way. Culturally speaking, and I knew of Nipsey Hussle years before not because of what he did in music. I found out of Nipsey Hussle because, a brother from my neighborhood had done a movie with Nipsey. Gilly the Kid did a movie with him, and watching Gilly's movie, I saw Nipsey Hussle in him, and then I started looking into who he was, and I was really impressed with his mindset. And this was talking about 6-7 years ago. I was impressed with his mindset in terms because he was thinking like a young Sam Cooke, and so I was really impressed with the way he moved. But you're absolutely right. This whole notion of being, trendy and cult followings and this, that, and the other, and how we just jump on bandwagon after bandwagon and off the Nipsey bandwagon onto the Kamala Harris bandwagon, and then she's a black queen when 2 years ago she wasn't even acknowledging being black. We just jump all over the place instead of staying focused, culturally speaking, and not allowing perpetrations to take place.
Look, we've been in this long enough. All right, we've been 10 toes down in this long enough. We've seen the word hotep go from something good to being demonized. Right, we've seen that. We've seen the word conscious go from being something good to being demonized. We've gone from nobody really knowing what melanin is to melanin being the trend. We've gone from the idea. Think about it. It was one time Dr. Claude Anderson was the only one talking, really pushing the black business angle, really pushing it. Now it's everywhere because things have become trendy. But like you said, if it's already embedded in the culture, you don't have to worry about following trends because that's just what you do as a people. And so we don't. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
But it's just like get over the trends and start establishing more cultural practices that's good for us, or practicing those cultural practices that's already there. Like actually do it. Don't just talk about it. Do it for real. Like we always talk about, well, we need to unite, but then you always find a reason not to unite.
Well, and that's where I talk about like congruence again. Because if you're operating from a position of congruence, the culture will develop. And I do think we need to develop that culture before we start trying to do anything else. Because the problem we have now is, I know on the surface, everybody's like, well, it's a good thing everybody's talking about black business. No, it's not. Because it's surface level shit. And it waters down the conversation. It keeps us from going in depth and actually analyzing shit and doing the things that we really need to do, because everybody's throwing it out there from a rugged individualistic standpoint, trying to get you to feel guilty about not shopping with them. It's not true black business shit. And it's the same thing with melanin. From one end, it was a way of taking pride in your black skin, taking pride in your culture, your heritage, and this, that, and the third. Now it's become this thing, like we pretend like we're the only people with melanin, and it gives us a superpower, and then that bleeds into the colorism thing, and you got all this other shit to the point where now you got people out there saying, and I've been saying this for years because I keep hearing people say it, the reason why space is black is because of melanin. Stop it. Stop it. But that's what you get when shit become trendy. People don't know what they talking about. They don't understand the roots of it, the value of it, the nature of it. So they just use it in a way that they think makes sense. Oh, well, I'm black because of melanin, so space must be black because of melanin. No. That's not how this works. Like, and so even with that, like, we get into these things where, I'm like, I just want people to be more critical. Even if you're wrong in being critical,
just be critical.
Be critical about it. Like,
but you gotta actually read and research and all that shit, Pat. P ain't got time for that.
I see.
Hey,
But that's what I'm saying. So, but here's the rub, right? I don't expect every black person to have the time, the energy, or even the desire to want to read and study. And that's where I put the onus on the black intellectuals. Those people with platforms, those people who supposedly do this shit. And there's room for all of those people on YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram. There's room for everybody. But if you want to cultivate that type of platform, I'm holding you to that standard. Every single one of these people that I see with a video spitting bullshit, and I'm not talking about bullshit that they've at least researched and looked into. Like,
Just
I can
regurgitating,
tolerate that kind of bullshit.
regurgitating Republican talking points and
Right.
other
I'm
stuff.
talking about people that just spit shit out. Like they just reach elbow deep into their asshole,
They pull out some
grab
blood.
whatever they grab and just pull it out and say, here.
They
I'm
don't.
talking about those people. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of them out there.
Hey, yeah.
Well, and they outnumber us because they say what's popular, they say what's comfortable to hear, they say, like we say, they go with what's trending. But meanwhile, the people that need to hear it, they seem to gravitate. They need to hear the truth. They seem to gravitate towards those outlets, and that's the tragedy in all this now, because they become so full off of this feel good prosperity talk and all these other things that once you start talking about things that reside that call for some critical insight and some critical outlook and actually for some fact checking, you really can't get that. I mean, I remember there was a push a few years ago where people actually thought the memes were like facts.
I don't know why, and I want to throw something at it. And if you're out there and you're watching this, be offended. I want to throw something at you if you thought the memes were actually real. Yes, I do.
So but it speaks to the fact that I think so. Where do we start, right? And I think one of the things specifically what you do, Pat, is really brilliant. You have younger students that you teach that you hammer with some really intense critical thinking exercises. I mean, I've seen the work that you've done with these young people, and I'm thinking to myself, damn, I don't even know if my college students can handle this particular exercise. So kudos to you, because I think that's one of the things we have to do is start younger and get young people thinking critically about what they're walking into and getting them used to the exercise, because it's not necessarily what they're going over at that particular time, but basically speaking, if they understand how to operate and think critically, they will look at the pros and cons of every situation. They will dive deeper into a particular issue. They will be able to contextualize, the different steps and levels and the parameters of any particular item that comes across their table. Be it understanding how politics work, or be it, understanding the fundamentals of being Black in America. They will truly have a more nuanced way of attacking that information, and even being able to create new information based on their studies, research, and things of that nature. And I think that's where we need to start, with this, because too many things that, when I really thought, when I really lost it is when I saw how many sisters bought into Steve Harvey's Think Like a Man book, and how many of them started talking about important things they read in that book. And I'm like,
don't you talk about my Uncle Stephen.
At the time, he was on his third marriage. Now he's on his third marriage.
Steve Harvey is tried and true, a real relationship. He's never done anything wrong in the relationship, so his information is true. PC, stop it. People should not go to their fathers if their fathers are in their life. They should listen to Steve. Think about it. What sense it make if your father actually likes you and you actually like them and they in your life? What sense does it make to actually talk to your father about relationship advice and men rather than going to Steve Harvey, somebody you don't know?
Well, let me ask two of his former wives, see what they say.
That was low. Go ahead, PC.
My bad.
Hey man, yeah, we keep it a bean on here, man. We keep it 100. But that's we continue to promote um, venues like the Freedom Train Network, where y'all do a lot of interviews. I mean, Joe has probably the wildest sports show I've ever seen, but he
Yeah,
focuses
it's wild.
on he focuses on black collegians, things that are important to black college students, or black institutions in regards to sports. But lessons from the screen, where you go into depth. I mean, you broke down the stimulus package, you broke down a whole lot of other things, various information, different books, movies, things of that nature. I can't wait to see what your lessons from the screen is going to be about this a night in Miami, because I have some one night in Miami, because I have some thoughts about that film myself. But I mean, just platforms like this these are the ones that need to go viral. These are the ones that need to go viral, because we're not the information is there. It's funny because when I find things on YouTube that has real in-depth thought and information, it's probably less than 1,000 views. But when you find the things with the shenanigans, bells and whistles, and the shiny stuff, and I love the production quality of a lot of things I see, but that's pretty much it. It's all fluff. And we got too comfortable with fluff because we don't like to think too hard about stuff. And unfortunately, that's been the crux of our, community. So, when we start talking, because somebody's gonna come on here and say, well, what are the solutions? That inevitably
you doing something. That's the solutions. Do something.
But we've kind of been talking about solutions this whole time. We talked about congruency. We talked about cleaning up the communities. We talked about getting involved with the kids at a young age, getting involved with the kids. We talked about getting off social media and getting out into the real world. Like, we've been dropping nuggets. We even directly said we have solutions, but this isn't necessarily the show to get into those solutions. But we have solutions, and we've been dropping nuggets and hints at the solutions the whole time. And if you don't understand why this isn't necessarily the greatest platform, the greatest time to get into solutions, then I would encourage you to do some more reading on history. But fact of the matter is, I think, I guess to transition into that last topic that Joe wanted to talk on, we are contemplating starting a new series here on the Freedom Train website, the Freedom Train podcast, not the network.
Yeah, the Freedom within the podcast, a new series on relationships.
We're thinking about calling it Green Pill. We're gonna make a new pill. They got the red pill.
Yeah, the red pill and the blue
pill. They
pill.
got the blue pill. We got the green pill.
We got it. So you got over here. You got pimps. Over here, you got simps. It need to be something in the middle.
As long as you call the purple pill, because
no.
Nah, because purple is royalty. That's got a lot of historical context to it. We don't want to corrupt the color purple. We don't want to corrupt it. So we're gonna have the green pill because red, green, blue, right? Ain't those like the primary colors or whatever? The colors that make up all of the other colors. So we're gonna be the green pill, and it's just gonna be Dr. Tip is gonna be there talking about whatever he feel like.
Shout out to Dr. Tip.
So some days Dr. Tip is gonna give y'all great advice. Other days Dr. Tip is gonna have 50,000 people get divorced at the end of the show.
Yeah.
It all depends. But we gonna call it down the middle, So if the simps is doing a bit too much simpery,
we gonna call you out.
And if the pimps is doing too much pimpery,
gonna call you out.
We gonna call and that's what it's gonna be over here. But was there something in particular you wanted to get? Because I do know the relationship between black men and black women has to be strengthened if we are going to progress. We've got to do better.
Well, I mean, okay, like we've been talking. Everywhere we go, there are millions. Well, I'm not gonna say millions, but there's a number of people who've created platforms who all have the answers for relationships. Everybody's the guru. Everybody's right. This person is righter than this person. This person is righter than this person. You got this person, this person, this person, this person, and it seems like it's causing more discord overall. Yes, you may have individual successes, but it seems like the discord is overall. So these people on this person who support this person, they start beefing with this person and all these things, and you got more discord in the relationship. And my question, like overall, is through all these platforms, is the quality of black relationships actually improving, or is it getting worse? Because if we got all these gurus, we should be seeing improvement, right?
No,
Wrong.
no.
Okay, my bad. So that's me. That's me thinking how like my bad. That's me thinking
You
like
talking about
if
people
people would.
good intentions, that's one thing. But you
Okay,
talk about
okay,
somebody making a profit. Why would I work
okay,
myself out of a job?
okay. That's
And
so
so
right. I got I
when
got
you're out here, if my job is sponsored by single people who are struggling to figure out what's going on, then I can make it look like I'm empowering them, and maybe I'm going to empower a few, but for the most part, I'm going to create different categories of things, and then I'm going to create it in a way that's going to make it seem as though you have to be an elite level, this, that, and the other, and then everybody's capable of being this. Now, I give, for instance, we joked about it earlier, but I kind of I give in this particular instance, I give Kevin Samuels a pass because I've actually heard him directly say, "Listen, I'm trying to get rich and I want to help people in the process, but make no mistake about it, I'm trying to get paid off of this." And he's also stated in many of different occasions, that his platform isn't for everybody. His platform is just for a specific audience. Now, if you choose to attend, that's one thing. So, you give a disclaimer. Now, we know people don't follow disclaimers, but he gave a disclaimer. But for the majority of the other platforms that I've seen, basically, it's about creating this whole, it's about building on the fractured relationships between black men and black women. And so it's kind of like the devil. They say the devil will tell you the lie, but the lie be based in truth. So if I, tell you that you need to move a certain way, make a certain amount of money, and you need to have a certain type of standard, this, that, and the other, well, maybe 2 or 3 of those things are what you really need to do. But, if I'm telling you these other things, these things are unreachable. If I'm telling you beauty standards are certain things and you're not, and you weren't born gifted as a beauty queen, then those things might, but if I'm telling you it doesn't matter because, you can build up yourself financially and you'll make yourself more attractive to people. But when you go out there in the dating world, it doesn't work. You're going to keep coming back for more tips, more clues. You created a cottage industry based on black division. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we don't have a community right now. Because we used to have community. We used to have block parties. We used to have situations where black people actually cared, where if somebody on the block had their water cut off, people would be pulling up to their house with buckets of water so that they can have some to drink, or people would throw rent parties for people to sort of like get their so that they can keep their apartments or stay in their house. We used to have situations where the community did things like that, worked on those community-based issues, made sure. We used to have town watches where we made sure certain things were in place in our community. We don't have none of those things right now. And we have so many people that are on their own accord that you can't even tell your neighbor's child to not run in the street without the neighbor being offended that you said something to their child. We have that type of, vitriol for one another. And then when we go into these places, what really comes out of all this is self-hatred in the black community is profitable.
Yeah.
And because we don't love who we are, when we see in the mirror, we're looking for ways to improve it. And I have no problem with anybody improving anything. I've been on my own mission to improve myself in terms of being better fit health-wise, my mental and spiritual health, trying to improve my financial standards or whatever. But it's not because I want to do these things to win a woman. I want to do these things to be better for me, my family, and my community. And then if I did end up in a situation or a relationship or something like that, those things would be, attributes that would serve that particular condition. I'm not doing these things to win, to seeking outside outside applause and to be what's the word I'm looking for?
Validated.
Validated. Yeah, I'm not looking to seek validation from anybody else. I'm doing these things because I want to live longer, I want to live better, and I want to live healthier. And I also want to be a pillar in my community. Yeah. So I'm doing those things for that purpose. But a lot of people, unfortunately, are only looking at their personal gain and benefit from these things. And I'm not saying they're wrong for that, but I'm just saying that well, I mean,
well, and I get what you're saying, and I do agree. But some platforms, when you are, especially for black folk, black women, and the black relationships, when you are intentionally, and Buddy know who he is, I ain't gonna say his name because I ain't gonna give him. All men hate him. He a black dude that all black men don't like because he out here lying and he pandering.
I had to say his name because everybody know who he is.
Well, hey, those who don't, you got to figure it out. But it's like
man with a tight t-shirt and
a little chain. Yeah. But it's like, listen, like that's destructive, and defeating into and platforms like it is destructive. I'm gonna intentionally lie to you so I can make money, and in the end, your quality of relationship is trash. But guess what? Mine is okay. My money is okay. Me personally, I'm not saying I'm right, but me personally, I don't rock with that. I don't rock with those people. And I see those people as an enemy to the community.
They're very disingenuous.
Anybody with a channel that's telling you, well, let's start here. Anybody that, and this is something that people just got to accept. Again, this whole critical thinking piece. Anybody that's telling you how to be a better person is telling you how to be their version of a better person. Right. Like it's their perspective. Keep that in mind. Anybody that's telling you how to get what you want and is not telling you that you need to change something about you to get it is not doing you any favors. Because let's be honest, if you were qualified or established enough to get what you wanted already, you would more than likely already have it. Mm-hmm. So there's a growth process like in place with everything. And like what you said, PC, I think it's something to keep in mind as well. Like a lot of people do tell you, they give you tips on how to achieve this, but they don't give you all of the tips. So like they'll tell you, so if it's a 10-step program, they'll have a YouTube video, and the YouTube video will be titled something like 5 steps to get you towards your goal.
Yeah.
But it's a 10-step program. And they'll start with step 2. You know what I'm saying?
They just pull 5 things out their ass.
Right. But that's what a lot of people do. And so you get caught up in this makes sense. Let's do it this way without thinking about like what was that documentary super popular back in the days? The universe is talking about how the universe is a genie and all you got to do is put your thought out there and it'll come back to you. And
you talking about The Secret?
The Secret. The Secret is a prime example, right? A prime example of what we're talking about.
The Secret bullshit.
Well, yeah, what The Secret is bullshit. But here's why The Secret's bullshit. Here's one of the reasons why there's a whole host of reasons.
I'm gonna hold the fingers up. I'm gonna hold my fingers up for you.
But here's one reason why The Secret is bullshit. I'm only giving one, so you ain't gotta put up 7 fingers.
Okay, because there's 6 more missing, right?
But here's one reason, right? The process of reprogramming your mind to attune to what you want is not as simple as just saying, I want this, and then keep going about your day. Like, there's a whole process that goes into mental reprogramming. It's a whole host of things that go into that process. Guess what? I'll give y'all a hint. That's why we have therapists and counselors. Did you know that? To help facilitate this process of reprogramming your brain. Like this, it's a whole thing. Like they got a whole host of professions out there. I know a lot of y'all didn't know that. I know I'm dropping the beans. Government, don't take me out for spilling these secrets. But I'm telling y'all the truth. It's a whole industry out there of people that went to school for years to learn how to reprogram your mind, because you more than likely can't do it by yourself. It's a whole industry. But anyways,
They just launched a Predator drone in your house, man. You better pack it.
but I mean, like, this is I think that's key. Like, a lot of people listen to these things, they say it makes sense, they get caught up in it. I was reading the other day when I was thinking about how to grow, when I was trying to research how to grow this platform. You know how many articles you come across? How to grow your podcast network to 50,000 listeners from zero. 5 steps. And they list out these basic ass 5 steps that you know at least 100 million people have tried before. Mm-hmm. Right? And then you even look at the person who has a podcast that's listed this step. They don't even have 50,000 listeners on their podcast. But they're going to tell me how to get... You look at YouTube, how to grow your YouTube channel from 0 to 1,000. And the video only got 200 views. What are we doing with our lives that we're trusting these people just because they say that they know something? But that's the world we in. A single woman can tell you how to get a man.
Hey,
you know,
figure, right?
The irony behind that is it really plays into this whole microwave generation thing we've been on for the last 2 decades. And it's not just a generation now, it's just a way of living where we want instantaneous results with minimal amount of work to do that. And people, and mostly people, you know, a lot of it comes into it too is the ego and pride. Because so many people have been trying it the wrong way for so long, and they've invested in the wrong way for so long that they're not willing to admit that they wasted their time. And they're not willing to admit that, you know, they needed to start from scratch, maybe even beyond scratch, because you might need to tear up the whole game plan that you came in with and start it all over. So one of the things that I've noticed is people just like the get rich quick schemes, you know, what people doing. I mean, we just saw it with this last calendar year where people are talking about these money pyramids, right? To get money up and this, that, and the other. So, you know, when we start seeing this being transferred, people aren't changing. They're just transferring these behaviors to different things. And so the same way people look at trying to get rich, the same way people look to find love. And the bottom line is those are things that happen naturally. You can't find an artificial quick, you know, step. And then let's look at we talked about being shallow earlier. Look at the shallow nature of what people are acquiring. I mean, we could talk about the Kevin Samuels video that went viral when and she wasn't a young lady, Joe. I heard you the other day. She was 36.
What I say?
She was. You said she was a young lady. I heard the other podcast. But
right. My age lady.
Well, you know, you're a young guy, you know, but you know, just the value. I want a man making 6 figures. Well, what else does he have to bring to the table? Well, that's just what I want, a man that makes 6 figures. Well, you don't even know what. Do you want him to treat you well? Do you want him to have good character? Do you want to know a man that makes 6 figures legally or illegally? Because illegally, I can help you right around your block. You know, do you these whole things navigate? And you know, beauty standards, beauty's in our beholders, and you know, things of that nature. All these different things that we speak of, you know, speak to very shallow character in the people looking for it. But then when you see that, and that's what it goes back to when we talked earlier about being childish. Children are excited about the things that glow, sparkle, bells that whistle, and things of that nature. Adults look at situations from the perspective of, okay, this is going to be a responsibility. What are the things that are what lies, what falls under my realm of responsibility? And once the fund is out of it, what foundation are we building? What legacies are we creating? How are we going to maintain this? Are we going to be doing empire building? Are we going to be compatible to the past? Can we even have a conversation where we're not going to be arguing? You know, are we going to have a spirit of agreement and a spirit of what do we call it? A spirit of it's not camaraderie, but you know, you get what I'm saying. We have to have the ability to be agreeable, not looking for or searching for a reason to be adversarial. Like I said,
right.
man, when I'm dealing with talking to a woman, I don't listen. I love revolutionary sisters, but I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. A lot of revolutionary sisters bring that revolution into the bedroom. I ain't got time for that shit. I am not. Hey, listen. I am not fighting a war outside and coming home to a war in my own goddamn house. So, and to be perfectly disagreeable, you gotta. I can't do it. But that's my standard. Those are some of the things I deal with, and I'm perfectly okay if somebody says, "Oh, I'm offended." I'm not fine, but I probably wasn't looking at you anyway. But keep it 100, man.
Bang, bang, bang.
Listen. If you're 5'2", 400 pounds, ain't nobody checking for you. I don't give a fuck. I'm sorry. Anyway,
bang, 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 bang.
So far, I'm the only one like black women here today.
I
black women.
Hey, I'm married to a black woman.
We all love black women.
I love black women enough to tell them the truth. And
but it's real. It's I get what you say. I definitely trust me. I get where you're coming from. But it's like there are a lot of unrealistic expectations out here with these relationships, and it's like we have to check the source of the ideologies that we adopt, because people, you got to be real. You're not just waking up out of your sleep one day. You know what? I want a 6-figure man.
Spirit of cooperation.
Right. But seriously though, people are adopting ideas, not even realizing they're adopting ideas. Like say the idea of you need a 6-figure man, or the idea I need a submissive woman. Well, who taught you that? Who implanted that idea into your mind? Because you didn't, like I said, you wouldn't go sit on the toilet one day and after pushing out the good, bang, 6 figures. Submission. No, that idea was implanted into your mind. You adopted that. So where did it come from? Checking the roots and the sources of the ideologies that we adopt, and the things that we are like, hey, I like this, I like this, I like that, I like that. Well, why do you like it? Where did that come from? Because, and the reason why I say that is because look at the quality of our relationships. There's nothing wrong with starting a relationship at a later date, but what's the quality of the relationship? There's nothing wrong with starting a relationship at a younger age, but what's the quality of it? And if we're having so many bad relationships, so many divorces, so many pussy holes, so many fuckboys, all these things going on, we ain't doing this right.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention, over half of people in these relationships and marriages are cheating on each other. So.
But in some circles, the behavior is encouraged. Hey, keep your little something on the back end. You always got to keep it in the pocket. What?
Yeah, the side chick and the side N-word culture is in full effect. With the having a affair, act like an adult for once. Not that I quote rap.
Yeah, I mean, we do have to look at. Because that's one thing I'm big on, is analyzing why you think that way, and that, like, we got to think about, why do people feel a certain type of way about their kuntu, and why do we as a culture, you know what I'm saying, feel a certain type of way about these types of behaviors, these types of people, what we're worth. Like, even to the standpoint of, I analyze myself, and I encourage other people to do it too, even to the standpoint of, like, your self-value. Where does that come from? Like, what makes you feel like you're worth the things that you say that you're worth? You know what I'm saying? Like, and is it fair? Because I know a lot of people do feel like they worth being with somebody that make, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures. But is it fair? Like, what about you, beyond you being you, is so special that you warrant somebody that has managed to do something that the vast over 99% of humanity has not been able to achieve? You know what I'm saying? Like, what makes you worth that? And why is somebody that has not achieved that beneath you? Like, why is it that a partner who isn't this type of way, why is that type of person beneath?
Because it's not popular.
Well, this whole conversation about levels and this, that, and the other, like, they're not on my level. And be perfectly honest, what the hell? When you have that, but that speaks to a certain level. That speaks to a certain sense of insecurity and narcissism all wrapped into one. Um, and psychologically speaking, it goes back what you said earlier, Pat. People need therapy. And, I'm proud to acknowledge that I'm in therapy as we speak. I think therapy is a natural,
Me too.
way to deal with a lot of the things we come up on, especially Black men in society. We don't have a lot of places where we can go and have a free conversation where we don't feel as though we'll be judged. I mean, we were part of a conference call where, we had people on the call saying, I can't deal with men that are emotional or crybaby ass men, and as men now, that's one less place that I feel like I can go to and have a conversation about something that might be emotional or might be, that might be one of those places where I feel as though, damn, I could lay my head on your shoulder. I can't go to that place right there because I realize I'm not free to not be judged. And, but I think people need therapy, man. I think as Black people and specifically, and Joe, you mentioned Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Claude Anderson since the 60s has been saying that Black people need therapy just because of what we're dealing with in America. Dr. John Henry Clark said Black people need therapy. Dr. Amos Wilson said Black people need therapy. We're talking some heavy hitters. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing said Black people need therapy. Dr. Shahrazad Ali said that we need to examine the dynamics between Black men and Black women. And
they hated that.
Roasted.
They hated that.
Roasted.
They hated that.
For one line in her book.
You make me be accountable for my actions.
But here it go. But when you have therapy, a therapist will hold you accountable. A true therapist will hold you accountable because when you're in therapy, and I know as a therapist myself, and you don't meet the true person for the first 6 or 7 sessions. You don't mean because they're sitting there lying to themselves. So when a person is in therapy and you're a therapist, you're just weeding through because you want them to narrow down all these lies until they realize that those lies you're bouncing the lies back to them until eventually they have no truth but to come clean with themselves. That's called a breakthrough. And as a therapist, you understand that breakthroughs are some of the most dangerous and critical times in therapy because a person could have a breakthrough and hate themselves and end up jumping off a cliff or swallowing a whole bottle full of pills if it's not handled with a delicate enough care. But let your damn friends be your therapist. And then you be wondering why somebody's locked in their apartment for weeks at a time. You can't hear from how they haven't been getting out of the bed, how they haven't even cleaned and washed their ass for about a month because, they're so depressed talking to their so-called friends, It's one of those things, but so you have to have proper therapy, and people, when you get the therapy, you have to also understand your boundaries with the therapist. Yeah. But that in itself, when we come back to accountability, a therapist will help you be accountable for things that you shoveled off, or things that you deflected on, issues that you deflected blame and responsibility for. A therapist will make you say, do you really think that's what happened? Write that down and tell me what it looks like when you read it. Come back next week after we think about this and identify these things. And the therapist will have you go over these things over and over again until it makes sense to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But even add to that, I do want people to recognize that when it comes to the policing or the boxing end of men's emotions, right? Because on top of what you're talking about, therapy, one reason why therapy is needed, especially for us, is I can't cry, but then I can't be angry. So I'm just supposed to swallow it. Look here. Mm-hmm. First of all, I'm a grown ass man. First of all.
That's part of the problem, Joe.
Nah, I'm finna say different. This healthy shit. But I'm a grown man who recognizes I got a full range of emotions, right? And so if something is happening and I feel like I got to cry, you're going to get all these goddamn tears. You're going to get them. And then ain't nothing you're going to do about it. And you're going to accept these tears because guess what? I'm a full human being and I have a full range of emotions and I can express my full range of emotions. And if you're a woman or even a dude who is like, man, you can't be doing that, then guess what? I'm not around you anymore. I'm not even allowing you in my space because I only need healthy people in my space who not gonna lie to me and who not gonna try to box me in, especially when it comes to managing emotions. And we talking about managing emotions within the confines of a relationship. So something wrong with my woman, She can cry, but something happened to me. I can't cry. I can't even be with you. We're not even on the same wavelength because you're not even on a human wavelength. You on some superficial wavelength. Because guess what? Humans, real humans, not no damn robots. I ain't the damn Terminator. I'm a real human. So you're gonna get these emotions.
That's part of the problem too.
Well, yeah. Well, here's there's a reason why black men live shorter lifespans than any other demographic on the planet right now, and that's one of the reasons. One of the things that people popularly misdiagnosed about heart disease, high blood pressure, and diabetes is people attribute that to diet, but all of those things get started. Your cholesterol builds up in your body with stress. The fatty cholesterol builds up and it blocks your reciprocal. I'm losing the verbiage here, but it blocks basically your body's ability to absorb, the proper insulin, and your blood pressure goes up. Those things all start with stress. Your diet doesn't improve it, but those things all start with stress, and nobody suffers those more than black men right now. And when you see that happening, you have to truly understand that as black men, we have to, sort of be accountable for our health in that manner. Culturally, and I see we have our Queen Selby in the building. We are definitely, those are things that are necessities. And it's not you don't need therapy for a lifetime, but you definitely need, you need therapy to help you deal with certain traumas you might have dealt with, certain things you go through in society, just to help you get your grasp on society at large and your relationship to society at large. You definitely need to be dealing with the situation with your head on straight. We see how chaotic everybody moves because they're not grounded. Culturally speaking, we're not grounded. Emotionally speaking, we're not grounded, and therefore we're bouncing all over the place. How the hell can you have a relationship? You're dealing with somebody and all their damn friends are single. So next thing you know, they do the whole benign neglect thing, or they do the whole thing. But as soon as you deal with some separation, next thing you know, everybody that was once, oh, they don't speak to me because I'm with you. Da, 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 da. Now y'all all partying together. What the hell? So that meant, and so you already know the stuff that that goes on, and that's the same thing with brothers. You got to surround yourself with people who represent your future, and people who are living like your future. I'm for, and y'all know I speak highly about the necessities to build black family is the first stepping stone to building black nationalism, because I have the majority of my friends my age, they're all married with children. The brothers that I hang with, the brothers that I consider to be friends and family, they're all predominantly are married with children. Joe's one of like the 3 people I hang with. It ain't, but I'm
working on that. Don't sleep on me, Colin. I'm working on that.
So we're nation building. We're working on it, right? And so. And vice versa, I'm for Joe. So, but when we start, when we look at the gravity of a lot of these things that we're dealing with, the whole key to building our community up and building the culture up that will actually manifest past where we are in terms of how impulsive we can be in regards to just not relationships, but just our dealings with each other. I think one of the most important things we can do is talk about the cultivation of building a black family. So those industries that have made millions and billions, off of the dysfunctional black households, black relationships, and things of that nature, they're not doing us any justice. What they're doing is they're profiting off of our pain. And we're saying, thank you, may I have another? Instead of saying, you know what, this hurts. Let me try something new. I forget who it was, but somebody, Master P, a long time ago, somebody asked Master P, what would happen to you if you lost this fortune? He said, I would sell this house. I would sell all the gold faucets and toilet seats in this house, and I would go back into the drawing board and build it back up again. And what have you seen with Master P? Once his record label sort of took a back step to Cash Money and all those other people, Master P reinvested himself, and now he's producing movies. He's behind a lot of different creating sort of, economic stimulus for the members of his tribe and things of that nature. And we need to sort of look at that particular mindset. So he wasn't just a rapper, he was a businessman who was community based. And since when rap was profitable, he bounced off, he used that. When rap stopped being profitable, he went into, generating business and creating an economy for his community. And we have to sort of look at life like that when it comes to dealing with each other. If things we were doing in the past don't work, why in the fuck are we still doing it? Why aren't we looking at different ways to, to get the results that we know we're seeking desire? I'm not going to spend the rest of my life doing things backwards when I see if I just step onto the other side, I can do it the right way and build it the right way. And all the things that I think that I work for and deserve will be there when the work is being done.
Straight up and down, B.
I kind of missed the podcast, man. Hey, I'm feeling the energy. Feeling the energy.
We're pulling you back in, brother. We pulling you back in, brother. Come on back, rock with the click, man. Hey, man. Go ahead, Pat.
And I got to rant now. Hold on.
Go ahead, Pat.
He done ran it 3 times, and I got to rant now.
Go ahead.
So, I was eating
Applejack.
I was eating Apple Jacks. How did you know that?
I'm psychic.
Oh.
It's Cleo, my sister.
So, and what had happened was it was a Tuesday, and we made love on Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday and Saturday, and then we chilled on Sunday, and then it was like Monday. Craig David. I don't have nothing to rant about.
Hey, the fact that you remember Craig David, it's impressive. I give you 2 points for that.
Thank you. Nah, but I think all black people should. One of the things I think we gotta get away from is, it's interesting because we go to the doctor when we sick. We go to the church or to some spiritual institution when we feel like we need something spiritual. And then we turn to our ill-equipped, untrained, similarly broken-ass friends when we have mental problems. And that is just... And most of the time, the people we're turning to aren't really true friends. They're just people in the moment that are there. You know what I'm saying? And I don't care how long they've been there, because you can know somebody for 20 years and that still not be your friend. You know what I'm saying? So, but even that concept of like friendship, what is friendship? That concept needs to be like I just think everything about black people here in America needs to be analyzed, looked at, thought about, and more than likely restructured from the ground up to suit us. Period. Like,
right.
And that does start with having a cultural realignment, a cultural shift. And from that cultural shift, I'll say the very first group of people that come out of that cultural realignment need to be mental health specialists. They need to come out and do what they do. And then we can start looking at the business and the education and the politics and all the other stuff. Because right now, everybody has an ulterior motive. Everybody has some angle they're trying to take, even when the shit sound good to you. Like PC was just saying, we were on the call, and there were a lot of things happening on that call that I was observing that to a lot of the people on that call sounded great. But to me, an outsider looking at it from the perspective I had, there was a lot of self-serving shit going on. There was a lot of things that weren't beneficial to the other people that was happening. And I see that frequently when we're, engaged in interactions that are supposed to be high level, high quality. And I'm with you, PC. What the fuck does that even mean? But when we're in these spaces, right, where we're above the peons down there that don't even know who they are. Never mind my whole identity of who I am. came from the same group of white people that I'm criticizing the peons for believing. But never mind all that. Never mind all
This
that.
water comes from the Philippines.
That's
I am,
right.
I am booty.
And the Philippines is the black Asians, according to some. So,
I
but
just picked the drink.
in any case, I think we need to like really just have a sit back look. But I want to take it all the way back around because like the whole conversation on relationships in black spaces, I think that really needs his own show. Um
Right.
what happened and what is happening is serious. Don't It should not be swept under the rug. I'm not going to stop talking about it because that was a major historical event and it marked the end of something and the beginning of something else. And I'm going to be honest, I don't really know what ended and what began. I have my ideas. I know what I'm looking at, but I can't say definitively. We're going to have to go some time before we can see what ended. But
Right.
we can definitively see what's starting and what that looks like. And it don't look good for black people in America. It don't look good for anybody in America that's not a white person that supports Donald Trump. But we talking specifically about black people right now, and it don't look good for black people. They're supposed to be January 20th, the inauguration is happening. I am amazed that they have not already designated this as an extraordinary inauguration, meaning that it won't get the fanfare. Like, if I was in power, I would say swear this man in the dark of night in a quiet room somewhere. Don't make it a major spectacle. So the mere fact that that is not being pushed has me looking around because it's happened before. Yep. Like, this is, I believe, the 55th presidential inauguration. There have been more than 55 inaugurations, but 9 of them were extraordinary inaugurations that happened quickly, without the fanfare, without they boom, get it over with. The fact that we are facing this type of scenario and that is not being presented as an option is troubling to me. That signals something. And we know that Trump wants the inauguration to be held crazy, and we know that there are a lot of people in that circle that want the inauguration to go down so that something else can go down with it. All I'm saying is the same thing that Scar said in The Lion King. That's all I'm saying. Be prepared. Boom, 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 boom.
Well, you know, because and in closing with that, I mean, there was, I believe the president was Tyler or something of that nature. There was an assassination during an inauguration, and the president, well, no, I'm not sure. I want to make sure I get the names right. But there was an assassination with an inauguration. A president has been shot before. I mean, Ronald Reagan got shot. You know, there are, you know, I mean, well, in Lincoln, you know, but that's not inauguration. But the fact that, you know, that you have a level or chance for some real violence to take place in regards to the major shakeup, it does make you wonder what the backdrop really is. And unfortunately, when you have conspiracies or things that work out where, you know, there's stuff happening in the background that we're not fully aware of because we don't have access to it. This is definitely a time where we need to have our eyes and ears open everywhere. You know, I've been paying attention to people in my neighborhood who I've never seen before. And, you know, this is the time when, you know, we need to be as vigilant as possible. And we need to all make sure, you know, that, you know, the closest specifically, you know, we got 2 days to go. If this thing happens, you know, the level of outpouring of violence, we know when white folk get mad, they need to see blood. And typically speaking, they don't care if they spill their own. So they don't care if they spill their own or each other's. You know how they feel about us. And some of us happen to be victims of opportunity in a lot of places. Nobody should be out alone at night, or a woman should not be at a gas station alone without no weapons and things of that nature, because these are the types of places that makes us extremely vulnerable. We need to have our eyes open, and at the same time, we need to be talking about how we can manifest power in our own community in those same areas we just spoke on recently, throughout the the framework of this conversation. So I just leave with that, and we just need to make sure that we are empowered, no matter what happens, that we're going to be in a better place than we are right now when this thing is concluded.
We got to keep our eyes open. We can't be out here slipping, like, in the famous words of Money Mike on Friday After Next. Don't be sorry, be careful. Be prepared as well, though. We can't get caught slipping, because I don't trust none of this stuff that's going on as of right now. I don't trust no red, no blue, no orange, no green, none of them. Don't trust none of that, because it just don't line up to me. And I just think it's up to us to make sure we keep ourselves safe and do what we need to do. So with that being said, man, PC, man, we appreciate you coming on here and chopping it up with us, man.
Appreciate y'all brothers, man. Y'all my brothers, man. Appreciate the opportunity, the time spent, and the quality of this conversation, man.
Yes, sir.
And like favorite, you're fueling the fires, the embers for me to jump back out here in the podcast world.
That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Hey, man, the greatest podcast network in the history of podcasting, Freedom Train Network, www.freedomtrainradio.com. Hey, man, come on home, brother. Come on home. Hey, I do want to give a shout out to Shelby and Candace for the Shelby's World podcast, Enigma September and the Enigma Sep Hour, as well as On the Shoulders of Giants, Lessons from the Screen, the Fix Sports Podcast, and of course the Freedom Train Podcast series. And the feature with Clifford Jackson III, that's happening every day. So those are our podcasts right here on the network.
And the book club, sponsored
Freedom Train
by
Book Club.
That's every Saturday.
So all of it's going down. We literally got podcasting for y'all every day. So www.freedomtrainradio.com is the website. We're available on all podcast outlets, YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube.
Real quick, we are trying to get more podcasts, especially podcasts from Black women. So we still trying to do that. We got Queen Shelby, Queen Candace with Shelby's World.
We need some more. Hey, look, if you're a podcaster, you out there podcasting, and you don't want to podcast by yourself, we got a built-in network that you can go ahead and be a part of. All you got to do is hit me up in my message.
Yeah, hit Joe up.
Yeah, slide him a message, because Pat not gonna answer you. So if you want to get answered, hit me up, Joseph Ward on Facebook, the real Joseph Ward on Instagram. Slide in the DM, slide in the message. Let me know if you want to be a part of this. We'll sit down and chop it up. But this is a growing network, something you want to be a part of. And we out here looking to make a difference. So this is the network. And we appreciate everybody for tuning in. All the likes, all the comments, all the shares, all the discussions, everything from everybody. That's why we do this, to make sure we get these engagements up and to educate our people and just inform our people. So with that being said, he's Professor Carl Tones Jones. He's Patrick Irvin. I am Joseph Ward. This is the Freedom Train Network. And we'll catch y'all on the flip side. Peace.